The pack always protects its own. That's what they tell you from the moment you're born into a werewolf family. That's what Eva Thompson believed with every fiber of her being, right up until the moment her own packmates hurled her off the edge of Raven's Peak and watched her fall into the darkness below. But Eva would learn that sometimes, the monsters who save you are more human than the humans who destroy you. And sometimes, the beast who catches you when you fall is the king you were never supposed to meet. Chapter 1. The Wolfless Outcast. Eva Thompson had always known she was different. Wrong. Broken. In the Silverpine Pack, your first shift was supposed to happen on your 16th birthday, a sacred rite of passage celebrated with moonlit ceremonies and ancestral blessings. Eva had waited, trembling with anticipation, as the full moon rose over the mountains. She'd felt the pull, the ancient call in her blood. But when midnight came and went, her skin remained stubbornly human. No fur, no fangs, no transformation, just silence. And shame. That was 4 years ago. Now, at 20, Eva was the pack's greatest humiliation, a wolfless aberration, in a world where your wolf defined your worth, your status, your very right to exist. Move faster, wolfless, Stephanie McCall snarled, shoving past Eva in the pack house kitchen. The beta's daughter didn't even try to hide her contempt anymore. Why would she? Everyone knew Eva was untouchable in the worst way possible, too pathetic to even waste energy hating properly. Eva stumbled, catching herself against the counter. The breakfast dishes clattered dangerously, but she steadied them with practiced efficiency. She'd become very good at staying invisible, at making herself small. It was the only way to survive. Sorry, Eva whispered, though she'd done nothing wrong. Apologies had become her first language. Stephanie's lip curled in disgust. You're always sorry. Pathetic. She grabbed an apple from the fruit bowl and bit into it with deliberate aggression, her eyes never leaving Eva's face. I don't know why Alpha Olsen even lets you stay. You're a drain on pack resources. A disgrace to the bloodline. The words weren't new. Eva had heard variations of them every single day for 4 years. They should have stopped hurting by now. They hadn't. Stephanie, leave her alone. The voice was male, smooth, and carried the lazy authority of someone who'd never been denied anything in his life. Jared Eastman stepped into the kitchen, and Eva's traitorous heart did what it always did. It stuttered and ached with a longing she'd never been foolish enough to speak aloud. The future Alpha was everything Eva wasn't: powerful, confident, beautiful. His wolf was a magnificent silver beast that could take down a full-grown elk without breaking a sweat. He was destined to lead the Silverpine Pack into a new era of strength and prosperity. And 3 months ago, he'd chosen Stephanie as his mate. I was just reminding the wolfless about her place, Stephanie said sweetly, sliding her arm through Jared's possessively. The diamond engagement ring on her finger caught the morning light, a deliberate flash designed to remind Eva of everything she'd never have. Jared's green eyes flickered to Eva, and for just a moment, something unreadable passed across his face. Pity? Regret? It was gone before Eva could name it. Eva works hard, Jared said mildly. She deserves basic respect. Basic respect. Not friendship, not kindness. Just the bare minimum of human decency, offered like a charity she should be grateful for. Of course, darling. Stephanie purred, but her eyes promised Eva that this conversation would have consequences later. I forgot how soft-hearted you are. It's one of the things I love about you. Eva focused on the dishes, scrubbing at a plate that was already clean. This was her life, now standing on the periphery of other people's happiness, trying not to bleed too obviously from all the casual cruelties that came her way. Alpha Olsen wants to see you, Jared said, and it took Eva a moment to realize he was speaking to her. In his office. Now, Eva's stomach dropped. Being summoned by the Alpha was never good news. Not for her. Did he say why? Eva managed to ask, her voice barely above a whisper. Jared shook his head. Just said it was important. He hesitated, then added quietly, Be careful, Eva. The warning sent ice down her spine. Alpha Gary Olsen's office was located in the east wing of the pack house, a massive log structure that had housed the Silverpine Pack's leadership for generations. Eva had only been inside a handful of times, and never for anything pleasant. She knocked twice, her knuckles barely making a sound against the heavy oak door. Enter. The Alpha's voice was gravel and authority ground together. Eva pushed the door open and stepped inside, keeping her eyes downcast in the submissive posture expected of someone of her rank, which was to say, no rank at all. You summoned me, Alpha? Sit. Eva obeyed, perching on the edge of the leather chair across from his desk. The office smelled of pine, old paper, and the distinctive musk of dominant wolf. It made her feel even more inadequate. A girl without a wolf, sitting in a room that reeked of power she'd never possess. Alpha Olsen studied her for a long moment. He was a hard man, weathered by decades of leadership and conflict. His wolf had been legendary in his youth, a massive black beast that had unified 3 fractured packs through strength and strategic brutality. "Do you know why I let you stay, Eva?" he asked finally. The question caught her off guard. Because of my parents? They served the pack faithfully before they died in that rogue attack. Yes. Alpha Olsen leaned back in his chair. Your father was my best tracker. Your mother was an exceptional healer. They were assets to this pack. You are not. Each word was a knife, clinical and precise. I'm sorry, Eva whispered automatically. Stop apologizing. The Alpha's tone sharpened. I didn't call you here for apologies. I called you here because the Pack Council has made a decision regarding your future. Eva's hands clenched in her lap. What kind of decision? You're 20 years old. You haven't shifted. You never will. Alpha Olsen pulled a folder from his desk drawer and opened it, scanning the contents with detached efficiency. You consume resources, food, shelter, medical care, without contributing anything of value in return. The council has determined that you can no longer remain with the Silverpine Pack. The words didn't make sense at first. Eva's brain rejected them, scrambling for an alternative meaning. You're exiling me. We're releasing you from your obligations to the pack, Alpha Olsen corrected, as if the semantics mattered. You'll be given 24 hours to gather your belongings. After that, you're on your own. Terror clawed up Eva's throat. But I have nowhere to go. No other pack will take a wolfless. That's not my problem. Please. The word broke on her lips. This is my home. These are my people. I'll work harder. I'll do anything. You're not one of us, Eva. You never were. The Alpha's expression didn't change. There was no anger, no malice. Just cold, practical indifference. A pack is only as strong as its weakest link. You're a liability we can no longer afford. Eva felt something inside her crack, some final, desperate hope she'd been clinging to without realizing it. She'd known the pack didn't want her. She'd lived with their rejection every day. But she'd believed that somewhere, buried beneath the contempt, there was still a thread of connection, the bond of pack. She'd been wrong. When do I leave? Eva asked numbly. Tomorrow at dawn. Jared will escort you to the territory border. Alpha Olsen closed the folder with a finality that felt like a coffin lid slamming shut. Pack light. You won't need much. Eva stood on shaking legs. Thank you for letting me stay as long as you did. Why was she thanking him? Why was she still trying to be good, to be grateful when he was throwing her away like garbage? Alpha Olsen didn't respond. He was already looking at other papers, his attention moved on to matters that actually mattered. Eva left the office in a daze. The hallway seemed longer than before, the walls pressing in from both sides. She walked past pack members, people she'd grown up with, eaten meals beside, celebrated holidays with. They didn't look at her. They never really had. She was already gone. Eva spent the rest of the day packing what little she owned. A duffel bag of clothes. Her mother's journal. A photograph of her parents on their mating day. Both of them smiling with the kind of joy Eva had never experienced. The picture blurred as tears she'd been holding back finally spilled over. Knock knock. Eva quickly wiped her eyes and turned to find Jenny Trujillo standing in her doorway. Jenny was one of the few pack members who'd never been outright cruel to Eva, but not cruel wasn't the same as kind. Mostly, Jenny just ignored Eva's existence, which in the pack hierarchy counted as mercy. I heard you're leaving, Jenny said, leaning against the doorframe. Is it true? Eva nodded, not trusting her voice. That's rough. Jenny's tone was carefully neutral, the way you might comment on bad weather. Unfortunate, but not worth getting emotionally invested in. Where will you go? I don't know. Well, good luck, I guess. Jenny lingered for another moment, as if trying to figure out if the situation required more from her. Apparently deciding it didn't, she shrugged and walked away. Eva returned to her packing. She'd lived in this small room on the 3rd floor for her entire life. It had been her sanctuary after her parents died, the one place where she could pretend, just for a moment, that she was someone else. Someone wanted. Now it was just a room. 4 walls and a window that looked out at mountains that had never really been hers. She zipped up her duffel bag and sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the bare walls. 24 hours. Then she'd be out there, alone, In a world that had no place for wolfless girls with no family and no prospects. Maybe that was just another word for dead. Eva didn't sleep that night. She lay in bed, watching the moon track across the sky through her window, and wondered if this is what it felt like to be erased 1 hour at a time. Until there was nothing left. Chapter 2. The fall. Dawn came too quickly and not quickly enough. Eva stood at the edge of the pack house with her single duffel bag, watching as the sky bled from black to gray to the pale gold of early morning. The Silver Pine territory stretched out before her, miles of dense forest and rocky mountain terrain that she'd explored as a child, back when she'd still believed she belonged here. Ready? Jared's voice made her jump. He stood a few feet away, dressed in dark jeans and a leather jacket, his hands shoved deep in his pockets. He looked uncomfortable, which was almost funny. Eva was the one being exiled, but Jared was the one who couldn't meet her eyes. Does it matter if I'm ready? Eva asked quietly. Jared flinched. Eva, I'm sorry. I tried to speak to the council, but it's fine. Eva cut him off before he could finish the lie. They both knew he hadn't fought for her. Not really. You didn't fight for things that didn't matter, and Eva had never mattered. Not to him, not to anyone. Let's just get this over with. They walked in silence through the forest. Eva had expected them to take the main road to the border, but Jared led her deeper into the wilderness, following narrow game trails that wound between ancient pines and moss-covered boulders. Where are we going? Eva finally asked. The southern border is in the opposite direction. Change of plans, Jared said, his voice tight. Alpha's orders. Something cold slithered down Eva's spine. What kind of change? Jared didn't answer. He just kept walking, his shoulders rigid with tension. They climbed higher into the mountains, the air growing thinner and colder. Eva's legs burned with exertion, but she didn't complain. What would be the point? After another hour of hiking, they emerged onto a rocky outcropping that Eva recognized with dawning horror. Raven's Peak. The cliff was legendary in Silver Pine territory, a sheer drop of nearly 300 feet onto jagged rocks and a canyon floor littered with the bones of animals that had fallen or been pushed. Pack members avoided it, except during the most sacred ceremonies. It was a place of death and judgment. Jared. Eva's voice shook. Why are we here? 3 figures stepped out from behind the rocks. Stephanie. And 2 of the pack's enforcers, Brad North and Lowell Rutherford. All 3 wore expressions that made Eva's blood turn to ice. What is this? Eva backed away instinctively, her survival instincts screaming even though her mind hadn't caught up yet. I'm sorry, Eva. Jared's voice was hollow. The council decided that exile wasn't enough. You're a loose end. A wolfless girl wandering the territories, telling other packs about Silverpine's weakness? It's a security risk. I would never... Eva's protest died in her throat, as understanding crashed over her. They weren't going to exile her. They were going to kill her. This is mercy, really. Stephanie said, examining her nails with practiced indifference. Quick and clean. Better than what would happen to you out there alone. The rogues would tear you apart. At least this way it's family. Family? Eva's laugh was broken glass. You were never my family. Exactly. Stephanie smiled, cold and beautiful. So stop acting like we owe you something. Brad and Lowell moved forward, flanking Eva on both sides. She was cornered, her back to the cliff's edge. The wind howled up from the canyon below, carrying with it the promise of oblivion. Please. Eva hated herself for begging, but terror stripped away pride. Please, I'll disappear. I'll never speak about the pack. I'll say I'm a rogue, I'll disappear. We can't take that chance, Jared said, and the worst part was that he actually looked sad, as if his emotions mattered, as if his guilt could somehow absolve him of what he was about to do. You understand, don't you? Eva understood perfectly. She understood that she'd been wrong about everything. Wrong to believe in pack bonds. Wrong to think that somewhere beneath the cruelty, there was still humanity. Wrong to hope that being good, being quiet, being grateful would be enough to earn her the right to exist. I understand that you're all cowards, Eva said, and her voice didn't shake anymore. There was a strange calm settling over her now that the worst thing imaginable was actually happening. I understand that you're so afraid of what I represent, your own fragility, your own weakness, that you'd rather murder me than face it. Stephanie's smile vanished. Shut her up. Brad lunged forward, but Eva was already moving. 20 years of being prey had taught her how to dodge. She ducked under his grasp and tried to run, but Lowell was faster. His hand closed around her arm with bruising force. No! Eva screamed, thrashing wildly. Her free hand clawed at his face. and she felt satisfaction when her nails drew blood. But it wasn't enough. He was too strong, and she had no wolf to help her fight back. Lowell dragged her to the cliff's edge as Eva fought with everything she had. Her feet scrambled for purchase on the loose rocks. Her hands grasped at air, at anything that might save her. "Any last words?" Stephanie asked, appearing beside Lowell with an expression of bored cruelty. Eva looked at each of them, Stephanie, Brad, Lowell, and finally Jared. The man she'd once imagined might love her. If she could just be different enough. Better enough. More enough. "I hope you remember this moment," Eva said. "I hope it haunts you." "It won't," Stephanie replied. And pushed. Eva fell. The world inverted. Sky became ground, became sky. The wind screamed in her ears, or maybe that was her own voice. Time stretched and compressed, each second an eternity and an instant. She thought about her parents, wondered if she'd see them soon, wondered if there was anything after this, or if she was simply about to cease existing consciousness. Extinguished like a candle flame, the rocks rushed up to meet her. This was how Eva Thompson's story ended. Except, something massive and dark exploded from the tree line at the canyon's base. A wolf. The biggest wolf Eva had ever seen, easily twice the size of any Silverpine Pack member. Its fur was black as midnight, shot through with silver that gleamed like starlight. Its eyes were molten gold, burning with an intelligence that was almost human. Almost. The wolf launched itself upward with impossible power, closing the distance between them in seconds. Eva barely had time to process what was happening before. Powerful jaws clamped down on her jacket, not her flesh. Careful, precise, and the wolf twisted in midair, absorbing the impact of her fall against its own body. They hit the ground together, in a controlled tumble. The wolf curved itself around Eva protectively, taking the brunt of the damage as they rolled to a stop. Rocks and dirt flew. Something in Eva's shoulder screamed with pain, but she was alive. Impossibly. Miraculously alive. The wolf released her jacket and backed away, circling her slowly. Those golden eyes studied her with an intensity that made Eva's breath catch. This wasn't a mindless beast. This was something else entirely. "Thank you," Eva whispered, though she wasn't sure the wolf could understand. "You saved me." The wolf's ears flicked forward. It padded closer, lowering its massive head until its nose nearly touched Eva's face. She felt the hot breath against her skin, saw her own reflection in those burning eyes. And then the wolf began to shift. Eva had seen hundreds of transformations in her life. Pack members shifting was as natural as breathing. But she'd never seen anything like this. The wolf's form rippled and reformed, bones restructuring with liquid grace instead of the violent cracking Eva was used to. The fur receded, revealing skin that seemed to glow with an inner light. The transformation was beautiful, elegant, almost hypnotic. When it was over, a man stood before her. And not just any man. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with a powerful build that spoke of both strength and speed. His hair was black with those same silver streaks she'd seen in his wolf form, falling just past his shoulders. His face was angular and sharp, devastatingly handsome in a way that felt dangerous. But it was his eyes that pinned Eva in place. Those same molten gold eyes, burning with an intensity that made her feel simultaneously exposed and protected. He was completely naked, but he wore it with the unself-conscious confidence of someone who'd never known shame. "You're alive," he said, and his voice was deep, resonant, carrying an authority that made Alpha Olsen sound like a child playing at leadership. Good. That would have been a spectacular waste of effort otherwise. Eva's brain struggled to form coherent thoughts. "Who? What are you?" The man tilted his head, studying her with that same unnerving intensity his wolf had shown. "My name is Ricky Kellogg. And you, little wolfless girl, just became very interesting. I don't understand. Your pack just tried to execute you," Ricky said matter-of-factly, glancing up at the cliff face where Eva could still make out the silhouettes of her would-be murderers. They were standing frozen at the edge, clearly shocked that Eva had survived. "That makes you a reject, an outcast, or..." His lips curved into a smile that was all teeth and promise. "It makes you mine." "Yours? I'm the Alpha King of the Northern Territories," Ricky said, as casually as someone might announce they were a shopkeeper or a farmer. "And I have use for someone like you." Eva's mind reeled. The Alpha King. The rumors about him were legend, a wolf so powerful he'd unified dozens of fractured packs under his rule through a combination of strategic brilliance and overwhelming force. He was supposed to be a myth. A boogeyman parents used to scare children into obedience. He was standing in front of her, naked, claiming she belonged to him. "I don't belong to anyone," Eva said, finding her voice even though her hands were shaking. She'd just survived an execution. She wasn't about to trade one prison for another. Ricky's smile widened. "That's what makes you interesting. You have fire. Spirit. Despite everything they did to you, you're not broken. Not yet." He extended his hand toward her. "Come with me, Eva Thompson. I'll give you what your pack never could." "What's that?" "Purpose. Power." His golden eyes gleamed. "Revenge." The word hung in the air between them, dark and seductive. Eva looked up at the cliff where Jared, Stephanie, Brad, and Lowell still stood watching, the people who'd thrown her away like trash. The pack that had spent 4 years teaching her that she was worthless. She looked at Ricky's outstretched hand, at the dangerous promise in his smile, and she took it. Chapter 3. The Alpha King's Domain. Ricky Kellogg's hand was warm, calloused, and completely engulfed Eva's smaller one. The moment their skin made contact, something electric shot through her, a jolt of energy that made her gasp. His eyes flashed brighter gold for just an instant, and his grip tightened almost imperceptibly. "Interesting," he murmured, more to himself than to her. Before Eva could ask what he meant, Ricky pulled her to her feet with effortless strength. Her shoulder protested the movement, bruised from the fall but miraculously not broken, and she winced. "You're hurt." It wasn't a question. Ricky's free hand moved to her shoulder, his fingers probing the injury with surprising gentleness. "The healing will be slow without a wolf. We'll need to get you to my pack doctor." "I'm fine," Eva said automatically, then immediately felt stupid. She'd just fallen off a cliff and been saved by a mythical alpha king who was currently standing naked in front of her. Nothing about this situation was fine. Ricky's lips quirked. "You're a terrible liar." He glanced up at the cliff face where the Silver Pine pack members were still visible. "And we need to leave before your former packmates decide to come down and finish what they started." As if summoned by his words, Eva heard shouting from above. Brad and Lowell were arguing about something, their voices carrying on the wind. Stephanie's sharper tone cut through their debate, and Eva didn't need to hear the words to know what they were discussing. Whether to come after her. "Can they reach us?" Eva asked, her heart rate spiking with renewed fear. "They can try." Ricky's voice carried dark amusement. It would be the last mistake they ever made. He released her hand and stepped back, his body already beginning to ripple with the telltale signs of transformation. "Climb on my back. We're leaving." "What?" "I'm going to shift. And you're going to hold on tight. Unless you'd prefer to walk the 60 miles to my territory?" Ricky raised an eyebrow, challenging her. Eva swallowed hard. Riding a wolf, especially one as massive as Ricky's, was not something she'd ever done or even considered doing. In the Silver Pine pack, your wolf was sacred, personal. Allowing someone to ride you was an act of profound intimacy reserved for mates or young children. But Eva wasn't part of that pack anymore. And she didn't have many options. "Okay," she whispered. Ricky's transformation was just as mesmerizing the second time. The shift flowed through him like water, elegant and controlled. Within seconds, the massive black and silver wolf stood before her, those intelligent golden eyes watching her expectantly. Eva approached cautiously, her hand extended. The wolf lowered its head, allowing her to touch the thick fur at its neck. It was surprisingly soft, like silk woven through with steel wire. She could feel the power thrumming beneath the surface, raw strength barely contained. "I've never done this before," Eva admitted. "If I fall off." The wolf huffed, and Eva could swear it was laughing at her. "Right. You already caught me once." Eva took a deep breath and climbed onto Ricky's back, her legs gripping his sides, her hands tangling in the fur at his shoulders. The moment she was settled, she felt his muscles bunch beneath her. "Wait, I'm not." Ricky launched forward. The world became a blur of motion. Trees whipped past so fast they blended into a tunnel of green and brown. The wind tore at Eva's hair and stole her breath. Ricky's powerful legs ate up the distance with impossible speed, each stride carrying them further from Silver Pine territory and deeper into the wilderness. Eva clung to him desperately, her face pressed against his neck, her eyes squeezed shut. She could feel his heartbeat steady, strong, unfaltering, could smell the wild scent of him, pine and smoke, and something uniquely wolf. It should have terrified her. Instead, she felt the strangest sense of safety. For the first time in 4 years, Eva wasn't afraid. They ran for what felt like hours. Eva lost track of time, lulled into a strange trance by the rhythmic motion and the warmth of Ricky's body beneath her. When he finally slowed, Eva lifted her head and opened her eyes, and gasped. They stood at the edge of a valley that seemed to have been carved from dreams. A river wound through the center like a silver ribbon, reflecting the afternoon sun. Ancient pine forests climbed the surrounding mountains, their canopy so dense it looked like dark velvet. But it was the structures that made Eva's breath catch. A fortress rose from the valley floor, part castle, part lodge, constructed from massive timbers and gray stone that seemed to grow organically from the landscape. It was beautiful in a brutal, uncompromising way, powerful, unapologetic. Surrounding the main building were dozens of smaller structures, homes, Eva realized. An entire village nestled in the valley, protected by the mountains and the forest. Smoke curled from chimneys. She could hear the distant sounds of life, voices, laughter, the ring of a blacksmith's hammer. This was the Northern Territory, the Alpha King's domain. Ricky trotted down the slope toward the fortress, and as they descended, Eva became aware of eyes watching them. Wolves emerged from the tree line, some in human form, others in their animal bodies. All of them stopped and stared as Ricky passed, their postures respectful, submissive. But it was the way they looked at Eva that made her uncomfortable. Curious, assessing, some confused, some intrigued. A wolfless girl riding on the Alpha King's back was clearly not a common sight. They reached the fortress's main entrance, enormous wooden doors carved with intricate depictions of wolves and moons and ancient symbols Eva didn't recognize. The doors swung open before Ricky reached them, manipulated by two guards who immediately dropped to one knee. "Alpha King," they said in unison, their voices reverent. Ricky didn't slow. He carried Eva through the entrance and into a massive great hall that took her breath away. The ceiling soared 40 feet above them, supported by beams as thick as tree trunks. Tapestries depicting battles and ceremonies hung from the walls. A fireplace large enough to roast an entire elk dominated one end of the hall, currently unlit in the afternoon warmth. And everywhere were wolves. They filled the hall, dozens of them, all pausing in their conversations and activities to watch Ricky enter. The silence was immediate and absolute. Ricky finally stopped in the center of the hall and lowered himself so Eva could dismount. Her legs were shaky when her feet touched the floor. Whether from the ride or the weight of all those staring eyes, she wasn't sure. The Alpha King shifted back to human form, standing naked and completely unbothered in front of his entire pack. A young woman immediately rushed forward with a robe, which Ricky accepted with a nod and shrugged into casually. "Listen well," Ricky's voice boomed through the hall, carrying an authority that made Eva's bones vibrate. "This is Eva Thompson. As of today, she is under my personal protection. Anyone who harms her, insults her, or makes her feel unwelcome will answer directly to me. Is that understood?" A chorus of yes, Alpha King echoed through the hall. Ricky looked down at Eva, and his expression softened fractionally. "You're safe here, I give you my word." Before Eva could respond, a door at the far end of the hall burst open, and a woman strode through with the confidence of someone who'd never been denied entry anywhere. She was striking tall and lean, with copper-colored hair pulled back in a severe braid and sharp green eyes that immediately fixed on Eva with calculating interest. "Ricky," the woman said, her tone familiar in a way that suggested long acquaintance. "Care to explain why you disappeared this morning and came back with a wolfless girl?" "Hello to you too, Dora." Ricky's voice carried dry amusement. "Eva, this is Dora Savage, my beta and second in command. Dora, meet Eva Thompson, formerly of the Silverpine Pack." Dora's eyebrows shot up. "Silverpine? Gary Olson's territory?" She circled Eva slowly, her assessment uncomfortably thorough. "And they just let you leave?" "Gary doesn't usually permit defections. They threw her off a cliff," Ricky said flatly. "Attempted execution." The murmurs that rippled through the hall were shocked, angry. Dora's expression darkened. "They tried to kill you because you're wolfless?" Dora asked Eva directly. Eva found her voice, though it came out smaller than she'd like. "They said I was a security risk. A loose end. Bastards." Dora's assessment was succinct and vicious. She looked at Ricky. "So you saved her. Very heroic. But why bring her here?" "Because she's useful," Ricky said, and something in his tone made Eva's stomach twist. She'd almost forgotten this wasn't a rescue mission motivated by kindness. The Alpha King had said she was interesting, that he had use for her. She was a tool. A means to an end. The realization shouldn't have hurt. Eva had no right to expect anything else. But somehow, it did. "Useful how?" Dora pressed. "That's between Eva and me." Ricky's tone brooked no argument. "For now, get her settled in the guest quarters. Have Dr. Norman check her injuries, and find her some proper clothes." His golden eyes swept over Eva's torn, dirt-stained outfit, the same clothes she'd been wearing when they threw her off the cliff. She'll need everything. On it. Dora gestured for Eva to follow. Come on, Wolfless, let's get you cleaned up. Eva glanced at Ricky, uncertain. He nodded slightly, a silent permission or perhaps a command. She wasn't sure which. As Dora led her toward a side corridor, Eva heard the conversations in the Great Hall resume, speculation and gossip already spreading about the Alpha King's mysterious new guest. She caught fragments as they walked. Wolfless, did you see? Why would he bring her here? Must be important somehow. The words followed Eva like ghosts. The guest quarters were more luxurious than anywhere Eva had ever lived. A 4-poster bed dominated the space, draped with furs that looked impossibly soft. A fireplace crackled with fresh flames, warming the room against the mountain chill. Windows overlooked the valley, offering a view so beautiful it made Eva's chest ache. Bathrooms through there, Dora said, pointing to an adjoining door. Dr. Norman will be up shortly to check you over. In the meantime, she pulled open a wardrobe to reveal an array of clothing in various sizes. These should fit well enough. Until we can get you properly outfitted. Pick whatever you want. Thank you, Eva said quietly. Dora studied her for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Word of advice, Eva Thompson. Ricky Kellogg doesn't do anything without a reason. If he saved you, it's because he has plans for you. Don't mistake his protection for affection. The Alpha King doesn't have friends. He has assets. The words were brutal but not unkind. A warning from someone who knew the man better than Eva ever would. I understand, Eva said. Do you? Dora tilted her head. You just survived an execution and got whisked away by the most powerful wolf in the Northern Territories. You're in shock. That's normal, but when the shock wears off, you're going to have questions. And you're going to want answers that Ricky might not give you. She moved toward the door, then paused. He's not a bad man, Eva. But he's not a simple one either. Keep your eyes open. Then she was gone, leaving Eva alone in the too beautiful room with too many questions and not enough answers. Eva sank onto the edge of the bed, her hands shaking now that there was no one to see. The adrenaline was finally wearing off, leaving her hollowed out and exhausted. She'd been exiled, thrown off a cliff, saved by the Alpha King. And now she was here, in his territory, under his protection. For what purpose? A knock at the door interrupted her spiraling thoughts. An older man with kind eyes and gray hair entered, carrying a medical bag. Eva Thompson? He asked gently. I'm Dr. Norman Rose. The Alpha King asked me to check your injuries. Eva nodded mutely, and allowed him to examine her. He was thorough but gentle, his touch professional and careful. Her shoulder was badly bruised but not broken, as Ricky had assessed. A few scrapes and cuts from the rocks. Minor injuries, all things considered. You're lucky, Dr. Norman said as he bandaged a particularly deep scrape on her arm. That fall should have killed you. The Alpha King caught me, Eva said. Dr. Norman's hands paused for just a moment. Did he? Something flickered across his face, surprise, concern. But it was gone before Eva could name it. Well, that explains the miracle then. He finished the bandaging and closed his bag. Rest tonight. Your body's been through trauma, even if the injuries are minor. I'll check on you tomorrow. Thank you, doctor. After he left, Eva finally allowed herself to shower. The hot water was a luxury she'd never experienced in Silver Pine. The pack house had only cold water for the lower-ranking members. She stood under the spray until her fingers pruned, washing away the dirt and blood and the lingering scent of fear. When she emerged, wrapped in a towel, she found a tray of food waiting on the table by the window. Roasted meat, fresh bread, fruit, cheese, more food than Eva would normally eat in 2 days. Her stomach growled traitorously. She ate mechanically, tasting nothing, her mind replaying the day's events on an endless loop. This morning, she'd been preparing for exile. Now she was here, in a fortress in the mountains, under the protection of a king who'd called her useful. What did that mean? What did he want from her? And why, despite everything, despite Dora's warning, despite her own better judgment, did part of Eva want to trust him? The knock on her door was soft but unmistakable. Come in, Eva called, expecting perhaps Dora or the doctor returning. The door opened to reveal Ricky Kellogg. He'd dressed since she'd last seen him, dark pants and a simple black shirt that somehow made him look even more commanding. His silver-streaked hair was still damp, as if he'd also bathed. Those golden eyes found her immediately, pinning her in place. May I enter? he asked, and Eva was startled by the politeness. An alpha king asking permission to enter a room in his own fortress. It's your home, Eva pointed out, but it's your space, for now. He stepped inside but left the door open, a gesture of propriety that Eva appreciated even as it confused her. I wanted to check on you, make sure you're settling in. I'm fine, Eva said, then caught herself. Actually, no, I'm not fine. I'm confused and scared and I don't understand what's happening. Ricky's expression shifted, something like approval crossing his features. Honesty. Good. I prefer honesty to polite lies. He moved to the window, looking out at his territory with the ease of a man who knew every inch of it. You have questions. Ask them. Why did you save me? Because you were falling. And I was there. That's not an answer. Ricky's lips curved into that dangerous smile. No, it's not. Try again. Eva's frustration flared. Why am I here? What do you want from me? You said I was useful. Useful how? Better. Ricky turned to face her fully. The truth, Eva Thompson, is that I've been watching the Silver Pine Pack for months. Gary Olson has been making moves that concern me, expanding his territory, forming alliances with packs that have questionable loyalties. I needed someone on the inside. Someone who could tell me what he's planning. Eva's blood ran cold. You want me to spy for you? I did. Past tense. Ricky's tone remained matter-of-fact. I was going to approach you, offer you a deal, information, in exchange for protection, and a place in my pack. But then they threw you off a cliff, which rather changed the parameters of our potential arrangement. So I'm useless to you now. Eva said numbly. I can't spy on a pack that tried to kill me. You're not useless. Ricky's voice sharpened. You're something far more valuable. You're a survivor. You're someone who lived 20 years in a pack that hated you and still maintained your humanity, your kindness. You're someone who looked death in the face and still had fire in your eyes when I pulled you back. He moved closer, his presence overwhelming in the confined space. I don't need a spy anymore, Eva. I need someone like you. For what? That remains to be seen. His golden eyes searched hers. But I promise you this, as long as you're under my protection, no one will hurt you again. You'll have a home here, a purpose. And when you're ready, if you want it, I'll help you make them pay for what they did to you. Revenge. He was offering her revenge. The dark promise hung between them, tempting and terrifying in equal measure. What do you get out of it? Eva asked. You don't seem like someone who does things out of the goodness of your heart. Ricky laughed, a genuine sound that transformed his face from dangerous to devastatingly handsome. Smart girl. You're right, I don't. What I get, Eva Thompson, is the pleasure of watching someone underestimated surprise everyone who ever doubted them. And maybe, if I'm very lucky, I get to see what happens when someone with nothing left to lose decides to become something powerful. He was talking about her, believing she could become powerful. It should have sounded ridiculous. Eva was wolfless, powerless, nothing. But when Ricky Kellogg looked at her with those burning gold eyes, she almost believed him. Get some rest, Ricky said, moving toward the door. Tomorrow, we'll begin. Begin what? He paused at the threshold, glancing back at her with a smile that was all predator. Your education. Chapter 4. Lessons in Power. Eva woke to sunlight streaming through the windows, and the disorienting sensation of not knowing where she was. For a moment, she expected to see the cramped, dingy walls of her room in the Silver Pine Pack house. Instead, she saw timber beams and stone walls and firs so soft they felt like clouds. Reality crashed back. The cliff. The fall. Ricky Kellogg. She was in the Northern Territory now, in the Alpha King's fortress. A knock at her door came precisely at dawn, 3 sharp raps that sounded more like a summons than a request. Come in, Eva called, sitting up and pulling the furs around herself. Dora entered, carrying an armful of clothing. Morning, wolfless. Time to get moving. The Alpha King doesn't appreciate tardiness, and you've got a long day ahead of you. She dumped the clothes on the bed. These should fit. Get dressed and meet me in the training yard in 15 minutes. Training yard? Eva's voice was still rough with sleep. Where did you think your education would take place? A library? Dora's smile was sharp. Ricky believes in learning by doing. Now move. You've got 12 minutes. She left before Eva could ask any more questions. Eva dressed quickly in the clothes Dora had provided: sturdy pants, a fitted shirt, and boots that were surprisingly comfortable. The fabric was higher quality than anything she'd owned in Silver Pine. and everything fit perfectly, as if tailored specifically for her. She found her way to the training yard by following the sounds of combat, grunts of effort, the clash of wood on wood, shouted instructions. The yard was a large open space behind the main fortress, ringed by a wooden fence and populated by at least 30 wolves in various stages of training. Some were sparring in human form with staffs and practice weapons. Others were shifted, wrestling and testing their strength against each other. All of them moved with a fluid grace that spoke of years of practice and natural talent. Eva felt immediately painfully out of place. There you are. Dora appeared at her elbow, somehow managing to look intimidating even though Eva was only a few inches shorter. Ready to learn? Learn what, exactly? How to survive, Dora gestured to the training wolves. In Silverpine, you were the weakest link. Here, weakness gets you killed or worse, it gets someone else killed trying to protect you. Ricky might have claimed you, but that doesn't mean you can hide behind him forever. The words stung, but they weren't wrong. Eva had spent 4 years being protected by her own insignificance. No one bothered to hurt her too badly because she simply wasn't worth the effort. That wouldn't work here. I can't fight, Eva said quietly. I don't have a wolf. I don't have strength or speed or... So you'll learn to fight smarter instead of harder. Dora pulled 2 wooden practice staffs from a rack and tossed one to Eva, who barely caught it. Humans have been surviving in a world of predators for thousands of years. You think they did that with claws and fangs? Eva hefted the staff uncertainly. They used weapons, and brains, and strategy, and the ability to see weaknesses others miss. Dora settled into a fighting stance that looked deceptively casual. Ricky sees something in you, Eva Thompson. I don't know what it is yet, but I trust his instincts. So I'm going to help you become whatever it is he thinks you can be. Even if it kills us both in the process. That's not reassuring. It's not supposed to be. Now show me what you've got. Attack me. Eva stared at the beta in disbelief. You want me to attack you? Did I stutter? You're a trained warrior. I'm making excuses. Attack me. Dora's voice sharpened with command. Eva gripped the staff and swung it awkwardly at Dora's shoulder. The beta didn't even bother to block. She simply stepped aside, and Eva's momentum carried her stumbling forward. Before Eva could recover, Dora's staff cracked against the back of her knees, sending her sprawling to the dirt. Pathetic, Dora said, not unkindly. You telegraph every move. Your stance is weak. You have no balance. We have a lot of work to do. Eva pushed herself up, spitting dirt. Around the training yard, other wolves had paused to watch. Some looked amused, others pitying, none looked impressed. Again, Dora commanded. They trained for 3 brutal hours. By the end, Eva was covered in bruises, her muscles screaming, her pride in tatters. She'd landed exactly 0 hits on Dora, and had been knocked on her ass at least 50 times. Better, Dora finally said, which felt like a lie given Eva's complete lack of success. You're starting to think before you swing. That's progress. I didn't hit you once. Eva panted, leaning heavily on her staff. You weren't supposed to. Today was about learning how to fall without hurting yourself. And how to get back up quickly. You'll thank me for that later. Dora handed Eva a water skin. Drink. You've got 15 minutes before your next lesson. There's more? Eva. Dora's tone gentled fractionally. Ricky assigned me to prepare you. That means combat training. Yes. But also politics, pack dynamics, history, strategy, everything you'll need to survive in this world. You're not just here to exist. You're here to matter. That requires work. Before Eva could respond, a familiar voice cut through the training yard noise. How's our student progressing? Ricky Kellogg approached with that same predatory grace Eva was beginning to recognize as his natural state. He dressed for training himself, loose pants and a sleeveless shirt that showed off arms corded with muscle and marked with scars. His silver-streaked hair was pulled back, revealing the sharp angles of his face. Every wolf in the yard immediately straightened, their attention snapping to their alpha king with instinctive deference. She's stubborn, Dora reported. Terrible form, no natural talent for combat. But she doesn't quit, even when she should. That's worth something. Worth everything. Ricky corrected. His golden eyes found Eva's, and she felt that electric jolt again like touching a live wire. Talent can be trained. Determination can't be taught. One of these things is far more valuable than the other. He moved closer, circling Eva the way he had in his wolf form, assessing, calculating. Eva forced herself to stand still under his scrutiny, even though every instinct screamed at her to hide from those 2 knowing eyes. You're favoring your left side, Ricky observed. The shoulder from the fall? It's fine, Eva said automatically. Ricky's hand shot out, pressing firmly against her right shoulder. Eva couldn't stop the wince of pain. Liar. But there was no anger in his voice. Dora, take her to the hot springs after lunch. The minerals will help with the soreness. And reduce her training schedule by half, until she's fully healed. Injured students learn nothing, except how to hide injuries. Understood, Dora said. Ricky's attention remained fixed on Eva. Walk with me. It wasn't a request. Eva followed him out of the training yard, acutely aware of the stairs tracking their departure. Ricky led her through the fortress and out into the forest beyond, following a narrow trail that wound between ancient pines. They walked in silence for several minutes. The only sounds the crunch of their footsteps and the distant calls of birds. You're angry, Ricky said finally. Eva blinked. I'm not. Don't lie to me, Eva. You've been polite and grateful and perfectly obedient since you arrived, but underneath, you're furious. I can smell it on you. The bluntness caught Eva off guard. You saved my life. I'm grateful. Gratitude and anger aren't mutually exclusive. Ricky stopped walking and turned to face her fully. You're angry that your pack betrayed you. Angry that you're here, dependent on a stranger's mercy. Angry that you're weak when you want to be strong. Angry at yourself for caring what anyone thinks. His eyes searched hers. Am I wrong? Eva's throat tightened. No one had ever seen through her so completely. In Silverpine, she'd perfected the art of being invisible. But Ricky Kellogg looked at her like she was written in a language only he could read. No, she whispered. You're not wrong. Good. Ricky resumed walking, and Eva hurried to keep pace. Anger is useful. Anger gives you strength when everything else fails. But anger without direction is just destruction. You need to learn how to channel it, shape it, make it into a weapon. How? By understanding what you're really angry at. They emerged into a small clearing where a massive oak tree stood, its trunk scarred with claw marks from generations of wolves. Ricky traced one of the scars with his fingers. You think you're angry at Stephanie and Jared for betraying you. At Gary Olson for ordering your death. But that's not it. Not really. Then what am I angry at? Ricky turned to her, and the intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. You're angry at yourself for believing them. For internalizing their lies about your worth. For spending 4 years making yourself smaller, quieter, more convenient and discovering that it still wasn't enough to make them value you. The words hit like physical blows. Eva felt tears burning in her eyes and blinked them back furiously. That's not. Yes, it is. Ricky's voice was gentle now, which somehow made it worse. You think if you'd just been better, kinder, more useful, they would have loved you. But Eva, they were never going to love you. Because the problem wasn't you. It was them. A sob broke free before Eva could stop it. Then another. 4 years of swallowed grief and suppressed rage came pouring out in ugly, gasping cries that she couldn't contain. She expected Ricky to walk away, disgusted by her weakness. Instead, he pulled her against his chest and held her while she broke apart. His arms were strong and steady. His heart beat a calm rhythm beneath her ear. He didn't tell her to stop crying or that everything would be okay. He just held her and let her shatter in safety. When the storm finally passed, Eva pulled back, mortified. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. Stop apologizing for having emotions. Ricky's hand cupped her chin, tilting her face up so she had to meet his eyes. This is the first step, Eva. Acknowledging the truth, feeling it, letting it burn through you until there's nothing left but clarity. His thumb brushed away a lingering tear. Tomorrow, we'll start building you into something new, something they can never break again. Why are you doing this? Eva asked, her voice raw. Why do you care? Ricky's expression shifted, something dark and complicated passing through his eyes. Because I know what it's like to be underestimated. To have everyone look at you and see weakness when there's steel underneath. And because he hesitated, seeming to choose his words carefully. I'm tired of watching potential go to waste because no one bothered to look closely enough. There was more he wasn't saying. Eva could feel it in the tension of his shoulders, see it in the way his jaw clenched. But before she could press, he released her and stepped back. Come on. Dora will have lunch ready, and if we're late, she'll make us regret it. They walked back to the fortress in companionable silence. Eva felt hollowed out but strangely lighter, as if crying had released some poison she'd been carrying for too long. Lunch was a communal affair in the great hall. Long tables were laden with roasted meats, fresh bread, vegetables and fruits. Wolves gathered in groups, their conversations creating a warm buzz of noise that reminded Eva painfully of Silverpine. But here, when Eva entered with Ricky, the conversations didn't stop. People nodded to her, acknowledged her presence. Some even smiled. Sit. Ricky gestured to a chair at the head table, the one reserved for pack leadership. The spot next to his. Eva hesitated. Should I? That's the high table. And you're under my protection. Sit, Eva. That's an order. She sat. Dora joined them moments later, along with several other wolves Eva hadn't met yet. An older man with a scarred face and kind eyes. A young woman with tattoos covering her arms. A teenager who couldn't be more than 16, practically vibrating with energy. Eva Thompson, meet the inner circle, Ricky said, gesturing to each in turn. You've already met Dora, my beta. This is Israel Hodges, my head strategist and war counsel. Nadia Myers, lead scout. And Ted Massey, who's training to be our next diplomat despite being far too young and optimistic for the job. I'm 19, Ted protested. That's not that young. In wolf years, you're practically an infant, Nadia said, ruffling his hair affectionately. She turned her sharp gaze to Eva. So, you're the girl who fell off a cliff and lived. That's either incredibly lucky or incredibly unlucky depending on how you look at it. Both, Eva said quietly. Nadia's smile was approving. I like her already. They ate and talked, the conversation flowing around Eva like a river. Israel discussed border patrols and potential rogue activity. Dora reported on training progress for new recruits. Ted enthusiastically described a diplomatic mission to a neighboring pack that had apparently gone very well. Eva mostly listened, trying to absorb the dynamics. This felt different from Silverpine meals. There was respect. Yes, Ricky was clearly the alpha, the ultimate authority. But there was also camaraderie. People challenged him, joked with him, offered dissenting opinions without fear of punishment. This was what a real pack looked like. Eva. Israel's gravelly voice pulled her from her thoughts. Ricky tells me you're from Silverpine. What can you tell us about Gary Olson's recent activities? The table fell silent. Everyone's attention suddenly focused on her. Eva's mind raced. I wasn't privy to pack leadership decisions. I was the lowest ranked member. Ricky finished. But you had eyes and ears. You were invisible to them, which means you saw things they didn't think to hide. Think, Eva. What did you notice? Eva thought back to her last weeks in Silverpine. She'd been so focused on surviving each day that she hadn't paid much attention to pack politics. But now, with distance and Ricky's prompting, details emerged. He was meeting with outsiders, Eva said slowly. Late at night. I saw them once when I was cleaning the kitchens. 3 wolves I didn't recognize, talking about territories and alliances. Israel leaned forward. Did you hear any names? Pack affiliations? One of them mentioned the Blackridge Pack. And something about a gathering. A summit? Eva frowned, trying to remember. They were planning something big, multiple packs involved, but they stopped talking when Stephanie came in. Ricky and Israel exchanged a glance. The summit, Israel said grimly. It's happening then. What summit? Eva asked. 3 months from now, Gary Olson is hosting a meeting of pack leaders from across the region, Ricky explained. Officially, it's about establishing trade agreements and mutual defense packs. Unofficially, his eyes hardened. I believe he's building a coalition, preparing for war. War against who? Ricky's smile was sharp and cold. Against me. Chapter 5. The King's Burden. The silence that followed Ricky's declaration was heavy with implications Eva was only beginning to understand. Why would Gary Olson want war with you? Eva asked. The Northern Territory is the strongest region. Everyone knows that. It would be suicide. Unless he's not fighting alone, Israel said grimly. If Olson can unite enough packs under a single banner, suddenly the numbers shift in their favor. 20 smaller packs working together could overwhelm even our strength. But why? Eva pressed. What does he gain? Ricky leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. Power, territory, resources. The Northern Territory controls the richest hunting grounds, the most strategic mountain passes, and the largest freshwater sources in the region. Any pack that controls this territory controls the balance of power for hundreds of miles. He paused. And perhaps more importantly, pride. Gary Olson served under my father. He never forgave him for choosing me as his heir, instead of supporting Olson's bid for the Alpha King position. You inherited your title? Eva hadn't realized the position could be passed down. Not quite. Ricky's smile was humorless. My father was Alpha King before me, yes. But the title isn't automatically inherited, it's earned through trial by combat. When my father died, I had to fight 17 challengers to claim the position. Gary Olsen was one of them. I beat him in under 3 minutes. The casual way Ricky spoke about defeating another alpha made Eva's stomach twist. She'd seen what pack fights looked like: brutal, bloody affairs that often ended in death or permanent injury. He's held a grudge for 12 years, Dora added, waiting for the right moment to strike back. Looks like he's finally found it. So what do we do? Ted asked, his youthful enthusiasm dampened by the weight of the discussion. We prepare, Ricky said simply. Israel? I want patrol routes doubled and scouts monitoring all pack territories within 100 miles. If Olsen is building alliances, I want to know who's joining him, and who's staying neutral. Nadia, gather intelligence on the Black Ridge. Pack their numbers, their leadership, their weaknesses. And Dora, he turned to his beta. Accelerate Eva's training. If war is coming, everyone in this pack needs to be able to defend themselves. She's not a warrior, Ricky, Dora said carefully. She's wolfless. She'll never be able to fight the way we do. Then teach her to fight the way she can. Ricky's tone brooked no argument. Humans have toppled empires with nothing but intelligence and determination. Eva has both. Use them. Eva's chest tightened at the confidence in his voice. The way he spoke about her, as if her limitations were merely challenges to overcome rather than insurmountable obstacles. I'll do my best, Eva said quietly. Ricky's golden eyes found hers. I know you will. That's why you're here. The rest of the week passed in a blur of training and lessons. Dora was a relentless taskmaster, drilling Eva in combat forms until her muscles screamed and her mind went numb from exhaustion. But Eva could feel herself improving, even if the progress was measured in inches rather than miles. She learned to read body language, to anticipate attacks before they happened. Learned to use her opponent's strength against them, redirecting force rather than meeting it head-on. Learned which pressure points could drop even a full-grown wolf if struck correctly. She also learned that she had a natural talent for strategy. Israel discovered it during one of their lessons on pack politics. He'd set up a hypothetical scenario, 2 packs negotiating over disputed territory, and asked Eva how she would resolve it. She'd suggested a solution that involved neither pack claiming the land directly, but instead establishing it as neutral ground that both could use for hunting under specific conditions. Clever, Israel had said, his scarred face breaking into a rare smile. You don't think like a wolf, Eva. You think like a diplomat. That's valuable. Eva had spent so long being told she was worthless that genuine praise felt almost dangerous, like something that could be taken away the moment she started to believe it. But slowly, carefully, she let herself hope. The evenings were the strangest part. After training, after dinner, after the fortress settled into nighttime quiet, Eva would return to her room to find small gifts waiting for her. A book on wolf history from Israel. A new set of training clothes from Dora. A carved wooden wolf from Ted, who blushed furiously when she thanked him. And from Ricky nothing. At least, nothing tangible. But every night, just after sunset, he would find her somewhere in the fortress. Sometimes in the library, sometimes in the gardens, once in the kitchen where she'd gone to make tea. He never announced himself, never made a grand entrance. He would just appear, settle into the space beside her, and exist there in comfortable silence. Sometimes they talked about the pack, about training, about nothing important. Other times they simply sat together, the quiet companionship more intimate than any conversation. Eva didn't understand it. Didn't understand why the Alpha King would seek out her company when he had an entire pack vying for his attention. But she found herself looking forward to those moments with an intensity that both thrilled and terrified her. On the 7th night, Ricky found her on the fortress balcony, staring up at the full moon. Does it hurt? He asked, leaning against the railing beside her. Seeing the moon and knowing your wolf will never answer? It was the first time anyone had asked her that question. Most people avoided mentioning her wolflessness entirely, as if acknowledging it would be rude. Yes, Eva admitted. Not because I want a wolf, necessarily, but because it's proof that I don't belong, that I'm fundamentally broken in a way I can never fix. Ricky was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer than she'd ever heard it. My father used to tell me a story about a wolf born without the ability to howl. The pack mocked him, called him defective, said he'd never lead a hunt or find a mate. But that wolf learned to communicate in other ways, through body language, through actions, through a presence so commanding that words became unnecessary. Eventually, He became the most respected wolf in the pack. Not despite his difference, but because of it. Because it forced him to become more than what nature intended. Eva turned to look at Ricky, her heart pounding. What happened to that wolf? He became my father. The greatest alpha king the Northern Territory ever knew. Ricky's eyes reflected the moonlight, turning them molten silver. Until he wasn't. What do you mean? Ricky's jaw tightened. Power corrupts, Eva. Even good men. Even great leaders. My father spent 30 years building this territory into something magnificent, and in his final 5 years, he nearly destroyed it all through paranoia and cruelty. He saw threats everywhere. Started executing wolves for imagined betrayals. Turned the pack from a family into a dictatorship built on fear. What did you do? I challenged him. The words were flat, emotionless, but Eva could hear the pain underneath. Trial by combat. I killed my own father to save the pack he'd spent his life building. The confession hung between them, raw and terrible. That's why Gary Olson hates you, Eva said, understanding clicking into place. Not because you beat him, because you killed his friend. Gary was my father's closest ally. His enabler, really. He encouraged every paranoid impulse, every cruel decree, because it benefited him politically. When I took over, I stripped Gary of his power and sent him back to Silverpine with a warning: rebuild your pack the right way, or I'll dismantle it completely. Ricky's smile was bitter. Clearly, the warning didn't take. Eva reached out without thinking, her hand covering his on the railing. Ricky's fingers tensed beneath hers, then slowly relaxed. I'm sorry, Eva said. For what you had to do. For what it cost you. Don't be. Ricky turned his hand over, threading his fingers through hers. The gesture was intimate, electric. It taught me that power without compassion is tyranny. That strength without wisdom is just violence. That being an alpha king isn't about being the strongest or the most feared, it's about being willing to sacrifice everything for those you lead. Even your own father. They stood like that for a long time, hands intertwined, watching the moon track across the sky. Eva felt something shifting between them, something deeper than gratitude, more dangerous than friendship. Ricky, she said finally. Why did you really save me? His thumb traced circles on the back of her hand. I told you. Because you were falling. No. The real reason. Ricky was silent for so long that Eva thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Because when I looked down and saw you falling, something in me recognized something in you. The same thing my father must have felt before his silence became strength. The same thing I felt when I stood over his body and realized I'd just destroyed the person I loved most in the world to save the people I was responsible for. He turned to face her fully, his free hand rising to cup her cheek. You were breaking, Eva, but you weren't broken, and I thought maybe if I caught you, maybe if I gave you a chance to become what you're meant to be, then your fall wouldn't be in vain. Then maybe all the falling I've done, all the people I've failed to catch, would matter a little less. Eva's breath caught. You're not responsible for saving everyone. I'm the Alpha King. Yes, I am. His eyes searched hers. But I'm learning that maybe I don't have to save people by catching them. Maybe sometimes, I just need to teach them how to fly. The metaphor was clumsy, but the emotion behind it was real. Raw. Eva saw in Ricky's eyes the same loneliness she'd carried for 4 years. The isolation of being different, of being powerful, of being responsible for everyone except yourself. I don't know how to fly, Eva whispered. Then we'll figure it out together. Ricky's thumb brushed across her cheekbone. You're not alone anymore, Eva. Neither of us is. He was close enough that she could feel his breath on her lips. Close enough that one small movement would close the distance between them. Eva's heart hammered against her ribs, her body screaming for something she barely understood. But before either of them could move, a howl split the night long, urgent, terrified. Ricky's entire body went rigid. That's a perimeter alarm. He released Eva and vaulted over the balcony railing, shifting mid-leap into his massive wolf form. He hit the ground running, already racing toward the source of the howl. Eva ran for the stairs, her training kicking in. Whatever was happening, she needed to get to safety or get armed. Preferably both. She burst out of the fortress's main doors to find chaos. Wolves were streaming toward the eastern perimeter, their faces grim. Dora appeared beside Eva, already in battle gear with 2 vicious-looking blades strapped to her back. What's happening? Eva demanded. Attack. Dora's voice was clipped. Small force, but organized. They breached the eastern patrol line. She grabbed Eva's arm. You need to get to the safe room. Now. I can help. You can't fight a pack of wolves, Eva. You'll die. Move. But before Eva could obey, a familiar scent hit her nostrils. Pine and cruelty and false authority. Silver pine. She turned to see them emerging from the tree-lined 6 wolves, all familiar, Brad and Lowell leading the group, and in human form, walking between them with a smile that promised violence. Stefani. Hello, Eva. Stephanie called out, her voice carrying across the clearing. Miss me? Ricky appeared in human form, flanked by Israel and a dozen warriors. His eyes were pure gold, burning with barely contained rage. This is Northern Territory, Ricky said, his voice carrying alpha command that made even his own wolves flinch. You're trespassing. Leave. Now. We're here to retrieve stolen property, Stephanie said, her eyes locked on Eva. That wolfless thing belongs to Silverpine. Return her, and we'll leave peacefully. Eva Thompson is under my protection. She belongs to no one but herself. Ricky's power rolled off him in waves. You have 10 seconds to leave before I tear you apart. Stephanie's smile widened. Alpha Olsen sends his regards. And a message: we know what you're planning, Alpha King. We know you're preparing for war. So are we. She pulled something from her jacket, a small vial filled with dark liquid. Consider this a warning. The summit is coming. Choose your allies carefully. She threw the vial at the ground between them. It shattered, releasing a cloud of acrid smoke that made Eva's eyes water. When the smoke cleared, the Silverpine wolves were gone, vanished back into the forest like ghosts. But their message remained, hanging in the air like a threat. Ricky turned to Eva, and she saw fear in his eyes for the first time since they'd met. They know you're here, he said quietly. Which means Gary Olsen knows I have someone who can testify about his plans. He'll come for you, Eva. Not to bring you back, but to make sure you can never speak against him. Eva's blood ran cold. What do we do? Ricky's expression hardened into something dangerous and determined. We make sure that when he comes, he regrets it. Chapter 6. Hidden Strengths. The fortress transformed overnight from a home into a war camp. Patrol routes tripled. Warriors trained in shifts that lasted from dawn until well past midnight. Israel and his strategists pored over maps and intelligence reports, trying to predict Gary Olsen's next move. And Eva found herself at the center of it all, whether she wanted to be or not. Again, Dora commanded, her voice sharp despite the exhaustion Eva knew she must be feeling. They'd been training for 6 hours straight, and the sun was already dipping toward the horizon. Eva gripped her practice staff and lunged forward, feinting left before pivoting right. Dora blocked the strike easily, but Eva used the momentum to spin, bringing the staff around toward Dora's exposed knee. The beta barely managed to jump back in time. Better. Dora's smile was fierce. You're starting to think like a predator instead of prey. That's progress. Eva lowered her staff, breathing hard. Her arms trembled with fatigue, and sweat plastered her hair to her forehead. But beneath the exhaustion, she felt something new: pride. She was getting stronger. Not wolf strong, but strong enough to matter. Take 5, Dora said, tossing Eva a water skin. Then we're moving to escape tactics. If Silverpine comes for you, combat is your last resort. First priority is always survival. Eva drank deeply, then asked the question that had been nagging at her all day. Why are you doing this? Training me so intensely, I mean. You could be preparing the real warriors instead of wasting time on someone who'll never be able to actually fight. Dora's expression softened just a fraction, but enough to show the woman beneath the warrior. You want the truth? Ricky asked me to protect you. To make sure that if Gary Olsen comes, you have a fighting chance. And when the Alpha King asks me to protect someone, I don't half-ass it. You might not have a wolf, Eva Thompson, but you're pack now. That means you're worth protecting. The word settled into Eva's chest, warm and unfamiliar. Worth protecting. Not because of what she could do, but because she belonged. Thank you, Eva said quietly. Don't thank me yet. We've got 4 more hours of training. But Dora's smile took the sting from the words. Now come on. I want to show you the emergency escape routes. Memorize them. If things go wrong, you run. You don't look back. You don't try to be a hero. You just run. Understood. Understood. They spent the next hour traversing hidden passages throughout the fortress tunnels built into the walls that dated back generations, designed for exactly this kind of emergency. Dora made Eva repeat the routes until she could navigate them in the dark, testing her with sudden drills that left Eva's heart pounding. You're a natural at this, Dora observed as Eva successfully located the exit from a particularly confusing tunnel. Most wolves have terrible spatial memory because they rely on scent. But you're actually visualizing the layout, building mental maps. That's impressive. Eva hadn't thought about it that way, but Dora was right. Without a wolf's enhanced senses, Eva had learned to compensate in other ways, paying attention to details others missed, remembering patterns, thinking 3 steps ahead. Maybe being wolfless isn't entirely a disadvantage, Eva said, surprising herself with the thought. Now you're learning. Dora clapped her on the shoulder. Different doesn't mean weak. It just means different. The sooner you internalize that, the more dangerous you'll become. They emerged from the tunnels into the fortress library, a massive room filled with floor-to-ceiling shelves crammed with books, scrolls, and ancient texts. Israel was there, hunched over a large map spread across a reading table, his scarred fingers tracing territorial boundaries. Find anything? Dora asked, moving to look over his shoulder. Israel grunted. More questions than answers. Gary Olsen's been quiet for the past week, too quiet. No border movements, no diplomatic overtures. Nothing. It's like he vanished. Or he's planning something big, Dora said grimly. That's what worries me. Israel looked up, his gaze finding Eva. Eva, come here. I want to show you something. Eva approached the table. The map showed the entire region, dozens of packed territories marked in different colors, with the Northern Territory occupying the largest central area. Silverpine was to the south, smaller but strategically positioned near several key mountain passes. You lived in Silverpine for 20 years, Israel said. You know the territory. Show me where Gary Olsen would stage an attack if he wanted to hit us hard and fast. Eva studied the map, her mind racing. She'd never thought about pack strategy before. That was work for alphas and betas, not for wolfless outcasts. But now, looking at the territories laid out like a puzzle, pieces began to click together. Here, Eva said, pointing to a narrow valley between 2 mountain ranges. The Silver Pass. It's technically neutral territory, but it borders both Silverpine and the Northern Territory. If Gary wanted to move troops without being detected, he could stage them there, and we wouldn't know until they were on top of us. Israel and Dora exchanged a glance. The Silver Pass is 3 days' march from our eastern border, Israel said slowly. We haven't monitored it because it's considered neutral ground. It would be a violation of the territorial accords to stage an army there. Gary Olsen tried to have me murdered by throwing me off a cliff, Eva pointed out. I don't think he cares much about territorial accords. She's right, Dora said. We need scouts on the Silver Pass immediately. Already on it. Nadia appeared in the library doorway, slightly out of breath. I just got word from our northern sentries. There's movement in the pass, at least 50 wolves, maybe more. They're not flying any pack colors, but the patterns match Silverpine formations. The room went deathly quiet. 50 wolves, Israel repeated. That's not a scouting party. That's an invasion force. How long until they reach our borders? Dora asked. If they move at full speed? 2 days. Maybe less. Nadia's expression was grim. Ricky's already mobilizing our warriors. He wants everyone in the war room in 10 minutes. The war room was exactly what it sounded like, a circular chamber deep in the fortress where the pack's military leadership planned and strategized. Eva had never been inside before. But now she found herself standing among warriors and tacticians, all focused on a 3-dimensional terrain model that showed the Northern Territory and surrounding regions in miniature. Ricky stood at the head of the table, radiating the kind of controlled fury that made the air itself feel dangerous. He'd dressed for war, leather armor reinforced with metal plates, weapons strapped across his back and hips. His silver-streaked hair was pulled back, revealing the sharp angles of his face and the burning gold of his eyes. He looked every inch the Alpha King. Gary Olsen is moving, Ricky said without preamble. 50 wolves staged in the Silver Pass, preparing to strike our eastern border. This is a direct violation of territorial law and an act of war. He looked around the table, meeting each person's eyes in turn. The question is not whether we fight, the question is how. We could intercept them in the pass, one of the warriors suggested. Hit them before they reach our territory. That plays into their hands, Israel countered. The pass is narrow terrain, perfect for an ambush. They're expecting us to react aggressively. If we send our warriors there, we leave the fortress vulnerable to a second attack from a different direction. So we defend? Another voice asked. We adapt. Ricky's finger traced a path on the terrain model. Israel's right. This is a feint. Gary wants us focused on the eastern border, while he hits us somewhere else. Eva. His eyes found hers across the table. Where would you strike if you were Gary Olson? Every head in the room turned to stare at Eva. She felt the weight of their attention like physical pressure, but Ricky's steady gaze anchored her. Think. What did she know about Gary Olson? About Silverpine? The western border? Eva said slowly, her mind racing through possibilities. Gary spent the last month building alliances with the Blackridge Pack. They control the western territories. If he wanted to coordinate an attack, he'd have Blackridge hit from the west while his forces engaged the east. We'd be fighting on two fronts. That's assuming Blackridge agreed to join him, Dora pointed out. They did. The voice came from the doorway, where Ted stood with a scroll clutched in his trembling hand. I just received a message from our diplomatic contacts in the western territories. Blackridge declared their allegiance to Silverpine 3 days ago. They're mobilizing as we speak. The war room erupted in controlled chaos, warriors shouting questions, strategists arguing over responses, but Ricky remained perfectly still, his eyes locked on the terrain model. How many? He asked, cutting through the noise. Blackridge can field at least 100 warriors, Israel said grimly. Combined with Silverpine's forces, we're looking at 150 wolves minimum. Possibly more if other packs join the alliance. We have 200 warriors, Dora said. We can hold them. Not if we're fighting on two fronts while protecting the fortress and everyone inside it. Ricky's jaw clenched. We need a different strategy. Eva stared at the terrain model, her mind spinning. 2 attacks from opposite directions. The fortress in the middle, vulnerable. Traditional warfare would tear the northern territory apart, even if they won. Unless, what if we don't defend? Eva heard herself say. The room fell silent. Ricky's eyes snapped to hers. Explain. Eva stepped closer to the table, pointing to the fortress on the model. Gary expects you to dig in here, to defend your territory and your people. But what if instead of waiting for the attacks, we evacuate the non-combatants, minimize the target, and take the fight to him? Abandon the fortress? One of the warriors sounded scandalized. Not abandon, evacuate temporarily. Move everyone to the northern safe houses where they're protected by the mountain terrain. Then, use our entire fighting force to hit Gary's troops in the Silver Pass before they can coordinate with Blackridge. Eliminate the eastern threat first, then wheel around and face Blackridge from a position of strength. That's insane, someone muttered. That's brilliant, Ricky countered, a slow smile spreading across his face. Gary thinks I'm predictable, that I'll defend the fortress at all costs because that's what an Alpha King does, protects his seat of power. But the fortress is just stone and wood. The pack is what matters. And if we move fast enough, we can turn his trap against him. It's risky, Israel warned. If Blackridge moves faster than we anticipate, then we adapt again. Ricky's voice carried absolute certainty. Eva's right. We've been thinking like defenders when we should be thinking like hunters. Gary Olson wants a siege? We'll give him a war. He turned to Dora. Begin evacuation procedures immediately. I want all non-combatants moved to the northern safe houses within 12 hours. Ted, send diplomatic messages to every neutral pack in the region. Inform them that Silverpine has broken territorial law, and that anyone who aids them will be considered an enemy of the Northern Territory. Nadia, take your fastest scouts and confirm Blackridge's position and numbers. I want real-time intelligence. Orders flew rapidly, warriors dispersing to their assignments. Eva stood frozen, overwhelmed by the realization that her suggestion, her strategy, had just changed the course of a war. Ricky appeared at her elbow, his presence warm and grounding. Walk with me. He led her out of the war room and up to the fortress battlements, where they could see for miles across the territory. The sun was setting, painting the mountains in shades of gold and crimson. You saved us today, Ricky said quietly. You saw what none of my warriors could see because you think differently than we do. You don't have decades of military training telling you what's possible and what's not. You just see the problem and find the solution. I might be wrong, Eva said. If I am, people will die because of my idea. If you're wrong, people will die because Gary Olson is a power-hungry fool who forced this war. Ricky turned to face her, his hand rising to cup her cheek. You're not responsible for his choices, Eva. But you are helping us survive them. That matters. Eva leaned into his touch, feeling the calluses on his palm, the warmth of his skin. I'm scared. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. His thumb traced her cheekbone. But Eva, you need to promise me something. What? When the fighting starts, you stay in the northern safe house with the others. You don't try to help. You don't try to fight. You stay hidden and protected until it's over. Eva pulled back, stung. You think I'm a coward? I think you're the most important person in this territory right now. Ricky's voice was fierce. Gary Olsen wants you dead. If he gets his hands on you during the chaos of battle, I might not be able to stop him. So you hide, you survive, and when this is over, you come back to me. That's not cowardice. That's strategy. The possessiveness in his voice, you come back to me, made Eva's breath catch. Promise me, Ricky pressed. I promise, Eva whispered. Ricky's relief was visible. He pulled her against his chest, his arms wrapping around her in an embrace that felt like both protection and possession. Eva let herself sink into him, breathing in his scent, pine and smoke, and something uniquely him. When this is over, Ricky said against her hair, we need to talk about what this is between us. What is it? Eva asked, though part of her was terrified of the answer. Something dangerous. Something necessary. Something that terrifies me more than any war. He pulled back enough to look at her, his golden eyes burning. But first, I need to make sure you survive long enough for me to figure out what to call it. He kissed her forehead, a gesture so tender it made Eva's throat tight. Then he released her and stepped back, the Alpha King reasserting control over the man. Get some rest, he commanded gently. Tomorrow, we evacuate. The day after, we go to war. Eva watched him walk away, her heart pounding, her mind reeling. She'd just helped plan a battle. She'd been held by the Alpha King like she was something precious. She'd made a promise she desperately hoped she could keep. And somewhere in the mountains, Gary Olsen was mobilizing his forces, ready to destroy everything Ricky had built. The war was coming. And Eva Thompson, wolfless, broken, supposedly worthless Eva Thompson, was somehow at the center of it all. Chapter 7. When Promises Break. The evacuation happened with military precision. By dawn, the fortress was nearly empty. Elders, children, and non-combatants loaded into transport wagons and escorted north by a small protective detail. Eva watched from her window as families said goodbye to warriors who might not return. Saw mothers clutching children who didn't understand why they had to leave their home. War had a face now, and it was heartbreaking. Time to go, Dora said, appearing in Eva's doorway. She wore full battle armor, weapons bristling across her body. Her expression was carefully neutral, but Eva could see the tension in her shoulders. Transport leaves in 5 minutes. Eva grabbed her small pack, essentials only, as instructed. She took one last look at the room that had become hers, then followed Dora down to the courtyard. Ricky was there, directing the final evacuation efforts with calm efficiency. When he saw Eva, something flickered across his face, relief, mixed with worry. He crossed to her in 3 long strides. You have everything you need? He asked, his hands finding her shoulders. Yes. The safe house is fortified, well stocked, you'll be protected, he was telling himself as much as her. Israel's mate Rebecca will be there, she's a healer. If anything happens. Nothing will happen, Eva interrupted, reaching up to cover his hands with hers. You're going to win, you're going to come back, and we're going to have that talk you mentioned. Ricky's smile was strained. Promise me again. You stay hidden, you stay safe. I promise. He pulled her against him, his embrace fierce and desperate. Eva felt his heart pounding against her cheek, felt the tension thrumming through his powerful body. When he finally released her, his golden eyes were burning with an intensity that made her breath catch. Come back to me, he said, echoing his words from the battlements. You too. Dora cleared her throat. Ricky, we need to move. Scouts report Gary's forces are on the march. Ricky nodded sharply, but his eyes never left Eva's. Go. Now. Eva climbed into the transport wagon along with 24 others, mostly women and children, plus a few injured warriors still recovering from previous skirmishes. Rebecca Simpson, a kind-faced woman with healer's hands and worry in her eyes, helped Eva settle into a seat. First time being evacuated? Rebecca asked gently. First time being in a war at all. Eva admitted. You'll be safe. The northern safe house has stood for 100 years. No enemy has ever breached it. Rebecca squeezed Eva's hand. Try not to worry. Our warriors are the best in the territories. But as the wagon lurched forward, and Eva watched the fortress disappear behind them, worry was all she could feel. The journey north took 6 hours, winding through mountain passes and dense forest. The warriors escorting them, 10 wolves led by a stern woman named Eunice Peters, kept constant vigilance, their eyes scanning the tree line for threats. They encountered none. The forest was eerily quiet, as if nature itself was holding its breath. The northern safe house was built into the side of a mountain, part cave system, part fortress, accessible only through a narrow pass that could be defended by a handful of warriors against an army. Inside, it was surprisingly spacious, with multiple chambers carved from the living rock and stocked with supplies that could sustain hundreds for months. "Home sweet home," Eunice announced as they arrived. "Everyone inside. We lock down in 10 minutes." The evacuees filed into the safe house, finding spaces to settle in the main chamber. Children who'd been quiet during the journey began to cry, overwhelmed by the strange environment. Mothers comforted them with soft words and forced smiles. Eva found a corner and sat, her mind racing. Ricky and the warriors would be engaging Gary's forces by now. The battle might already be underway, and she was here, hiding, while others fought and died. "It's strategy," she reminded herself. "You're not a warrior. You'd only be in the way." But the logic did nothing to ease the guilt. Hours crawled by. Rebecca organized the children into groups, keeping them occupied with games and stories. Eunice and her warriors maintained watch at the entrance, rotating shifts, and Eva sat in her corner, alternating between staring at the walls and imagining terrible scenarios. What if the strategy was wrong? What if Gary had anticipated their move? What if Ricky? She couldn't finish the thought. Night fell. They ate a simple meal of dried meat and bread. Children were put to bed. The adults sat in clusters, speaking in hushed tones, sharing fears and hopes in equal measure. Eva was helping Rebecca settle a fussy toddler when Eunice appeared, her face grim. "We have a problem," Eunice said quietly. "One of my scouts just returned. There's movement in the Western Pass Blackridge forces, maybe 40 strong, heading this direction." Rebecca's face went white. "But they're supposed to be engaging our warriors at the southern border. How are they here?" "Gary must have split his forces more than we thought." Eunice's jaw clenched. "Or our intelligence was wrong. Either way, they'll reach this position in less than 2 hours. We're defensible," Rebecca said, but her voice shook. 10 warriors can hold the pass. Against 40? Eunice shook her head. "We can hold for a while. Buy time for help to arrive. But if they're determined..." She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Eva's mind raced. 40 wolves against 10. The math was brutal, and inside the safe house dozens of non-combatants. Children, elders, the injured. They were trapped. "Can we evacuate?" Eva asked. "Find another route out?" "There's a back exit through the cave system," Eunice said. "But it's treacherous narrow passages, unstable rock. Moving children through it in the dark would be suicide. And we don't know if Blackridge has forces waiting on the other side. So we stay and hope help arrives in time," Rebecca said. "Or, we don't wait for help." The words came out of Eva's mouth before she'd fully formed the thought. "We go on the offensive." Eunice stared at her. "You want 10 warriors to attack 40 wolves? I want to change the equation." Eva's mind was spinning, pieces clicking together the way they had in the war room. Blackridge thinks they're attacking a safe house full of helpless evacuees. They're not expecting resistance. If we hit them first, ambush them before they reach the pass, we catch them off guard. Kill or scatter enough of them, and the rest might retreat. "That's insane," Eunice said flatly. "We're protectors, not assassins. Our duty is to defend this position. Your duty is to keep these people alive." Eva gestured to the chamber full of refugees. "If Blackridge reaches this pass, everyone in here dies. You know it. I know it. So we stop them before they get here." Eunice and Rebecca exchanged a long look. "She's right," Rebecca said quietly. "I hate it. But she's right. We can't defend this position against those numbers. Even if we ambush them, 10 against 40 are terrible odds," Eunice countered. 11 against 40, Eva corrected. "I'm coming with you." "Absolutely not. You promised, Ricky." "I promised to stay hidden and protected. But if Blackridge gets here, I won't be either. This is survival, Eunice. And I can help." Eva straightened, channeling every ounce of confidence she didn't feel. "I know Blackridge territory. I studied the maps with Israel. I know where they'll approach from, which routes they'll take. You need that intelligence." "You're wolfless," Eunice said, but there was less conviction in her voice. "You can't fight like we can. Then I'll fight differently. Use strategy. Create diversions. Draw them into traps." Eva met the warrior's eyes. "I won't be a burden, I promise you that." Eunice was silent for a long moment. Finally she nodded sharply. "Fine. But you follow my orders exactly. No heroics. No improvisation. Understood?" "Understood." Rebecca grabbed Eva's arm. "Ricky will kill us all if something happens to you. Only if we survive long enough for him to find out." Eva managed a weak smile. Keep everyone safe, Rebecca. We'll be back before dawn. They moved through the forest like ghosts, 11 figures in dark clothing, weapons at the ready, following Eva's whispered directions. The moon was barely a sliver, providing just enough light to navigate without giving away their positions. Eva had never felt more terrified or more alive. Eunice's warriors were professionals. They moved in coordinated silence, communicating through hand signals Eva had learned during her training. She stayed in the middle of the formation, protected but included. There, Eva whispered, pointing to a narrow ravine ahead. Blackridge will come through there. It's the fastest route to the safe house, and it's the path their scouts would have identified. Eunice studied the terrain, her tactical mind already working. Good kill zone, high ground on both sides, limited escape routes. We can position archers on the ridges, close combat fighters at the exits. She looked at Eva. Where do you want to be? I can climb to the western ridge. I'm not strong enough for close combat, but I can throw rocks, create noise, make them think there are more of us than there are. Diversionary tactics. Eunice nodded approvingly. Smart. All right, people, you heard her. Positions. We've got maybe 20 minutes before they arrive. The warriors dispersed, moving to their assigned positions with practiced efficiency. Eva climbed to the western ridge, her hands finding holds in the rock face that her lightweight frame could manage where a heavier warrior might struggle. She reached the top and positioned herself behind a cluster of boulders, gathering loose stones within reach. From here, she could see the entire ravine, the kill zone, as Eunice had called it. Now they waited. The minutes stretched like hours. Eva's heart hammered so loud she was sure it would give away their position. Her hands shook as she gripped a stone, and she had to consciously force herself to breathe slowly, quietly. Then she heard them. The Blackridge wolves approached in formation 40 strong, just as the scout had reported. They moved confidently, their postures relaxed. They weren't expecting trouble. Why would they? They were 40 warriors hunting evacuated refugees. They entered the ravine. Eunice's whistle split the night high and sharp. The ambush exploded into action. Arrows flew from the ridges, finding targets with lethal precision. Warriors dropped from above, engaging in close combat before the Blackridge wolves could fully react. Chaos erupted, snarls, screams, the clash of weapons and bodies. Eva threw her stones, aiming for heads and bodies, creating noise and confusion. She screamed war cries that probably sounded ridiculous, but added to the pandemonium. The Blackridge forces scattered, some trying to fight back, others attempting to flee. It was working. They were actually winning. Then Eva saw him. A massive wolf easily as large as Ricky's emerged from the rear of the Blackridge formation. Its fur was rust-colored, its eyes gleaming with intelligence and rage. This wasn't a common warrior. This was an alpha. The alpha's howl cut through the chaos, rallying his scattered forces. The Blackridge wolves regrouped with terrifying speed, their initial confusion replaced by organized fury. Eunice's warriors were good, but they were outnumbered 4-1, and now they were facing a coordinated force led by an alpha who knew how to fight. Eva watched in horror as one of Eunice's warriors went down, then another. The tide was turning. She had to do something. But what? She was one wolfless girl, with a handful of rocks against an alpha and 40 warriors. Then she remembered Ricky's words. You think differently than we do. You see problems and find solutions. Eva looked around frantically. The ravine, the high ground, the narrow exits, and then she saw a massive boulder perched precariously on the ridge above the ravine's eastern side. It had probably been there for centuries, balanced on the edge, waiting for the right push. Eva ran. She scrambled across the ridge, her feet finding purchase on rock faces that should have been impossible to climb. Below, the battle raged. She could hear Eunice shouting commands, could hear the snarls of wolves locked in combat. She reached the boulder and pressed her shoulder against it. It didn't budge. Come on. Come on. She repositioned, planting her feet, using every technique Dora had taught her about leverage and force distribution. She pushed with everything she had, every ounce of strength, every bit of desperation, every second of training. The boulder shifted. Just an inch. Then another. Then it fell. The massive rock tumbled down the ravine wall, gathering momentum, collecting smaller stones in its wake. It crashed into the Blackridge formation like a meteor, scattering wolves, crushing those too slow to move. The alpha looked up, his eyes finding Eva on the ridge. Even from a distance, she could see the recognition in his gaze. He knew what she'd done. knew she'd just turned the battle against him. He howled a sound of pure rage and began climbing toward her. Eva ran back the way she'd come, her heart in her throat. Behind her, she could hear the alpha's claws scraping against rock, gaining on her with terrifying speed. She wasn't going to make it. She was going to die on this ridge, torn apart by an alpha wolf. And Ricky would never know what happened to her. The alpha's jaws snapped inches from her ankle. Then something massive and black exploded onto the ridge, a wolf even larger than the Black Ridge Alpha, with silver-streaked fur and eyes like molten gold. Ricky. He crashed into the Black Ridge Alpha with bone-shattering force, their bodies rolling across the ridge in a savage tangle of fur and fangs. Eva pressed herself against the rock face, unable to look away from the brutal combat. The fight was vicious and fast. The Black Ridge Alpha was strong, experienced, dangerous, but Ricky was the Alpha King, and he was protecting what was his. Ricky's jaws found the other Alpha's throat. One savage shake, and it was over. The Black Ridge Alpha fell. Below in the ravine, the remaining Black Ridge forces broke and ran, their leader dead, their will shattered. Eunice's warriors let them go, too exhausted to pursue. Ricky shifted back to human form, his chest heaving, blood not all his own covering his skin. He looked at Eva, and the fury in his eyes made her flinch. "You promised," he said, his voice raw. "You promised me you'd stay safe." "I did stay safe," Eva said, though her voice shook. "I'm alive. Everyone's alive because we acted, instead of waiting to be slaughtered. You could have died." Ricky closed the distance between them in 2 strides, his hands gripping her shoulders almost painfully. "That Alpha was going to kill you. If I'd been 30 seconds slower. But you weren't." Eva reached up, her hands framing his face. "You came. You saved me. Again. I shouldn't have to keep saving you." The words burst from him with devastating honesty. "You're supposed to be protected, safe, not throwing yourself into battles you can't win." "I had to," Eva said simply. 40 wolves were coming for children and elders and people who couldn't defend themselves. We didn't have time to wait for rescue. So we became the rescue. And it worked, Ricky. Everyone's safe. Because I broke my promise." Ricky stared at her for a long moment. Then, impossibly, he laughed. A sound caught between admiration and exasperation, and something deeper she couldn't name. "You're going to be the death of me, Eva Thompson," he said, pulling her against his chest. "Or the making of me. I haven't decided which yet." Eva wrapped her arms around him, feeling his heart pound against hers. "How did you even know we were here? You were supposed to be engaging Silverpine forces. We won." Ricky's voice was grim with satisfaction. "Caught them in the Silver Pass exactly where you predicted. Gary Olson wasn't with them, he sent his Lieutenant Brad instead. We decimated their forces in under 2 hours. But when we returned to the fortress to regroup, Nadia intercepted an intelligence report about Blackridge splitting their forces. I knew where they'd go. I knew you'd be there, and you knew I wouldn't just hide," Eva finished. "I was hoping you'd prove me wrong." Ricky pulled back enough to look at her, his expression softening. "But no. I knew exactly what you'd do, because you're brave and brilliant and completely reckless when people you care about are in danger." "Is that a compliment or a criticism?" "Both." He pressed his forehead against hers. "Both." Below, Eunice appeared, climbing the ridge with visible effort. "Alpha King. The Black Ridge forces have retreated. We've secured the area. No casualties on our side." She glanced at Eva with grudging respect, thanks to Eva's strategy and that boulder trick. "Good work," Ricky said. Then, to Eva, "We'll discuss your definition of staying safe later. For now, let's get everyone back to the fortress." "The war's not over yet. Gary Olson escaped," Eva guessed. Ricky's expression darkened. "Oh, he didn't escape. He was never there. He sent his forces to die while he stayed safely in Silverpine territory." His jaw clenched. "Which means this isn't over, not by a long shot." Eva felt a chill run down her spine. Gary Olson was still out there, still planning, still dangerous. And somehow, Eva knew the real battle hadn't even begun. Chapter 8. The Summit's Shadow. The fortress felt different when they returned. Victory should have brought celebration, relief, joy. Instead, a tense quiet hung over the pack as warriors tended wounds, counted losses, and prepared for whatever came next. They'd won the battle. But everyone knew the war was far from over. Eva stood in the Great Hall, watching as Rebecca and the other healers moved between injured warriors, administering care with practiced efficiency. The casualties had been mercifully light, 3 dead. A dozen seriously wounded, many more with injuries that would heal in days. By military standards, it was a triumph. But Eva couldn't stop staring at the 3 shrouded bodies laid out near the fireplace. 3 wolves who died defending their territory. Defending people like her. "Stop torturing yourself," Dora said, appearing at Eva's elbow. The beta looked exhausted, her armor still blood-stained, but her eyes were sharp as ever. "You didn't kill them. Gary Olsen did when he started this war." "I know," Eva's voice was hollow. "Doesn't make it easier. It's not supposed to be easy. The day death in war becomes easy is the day we lose our humanity." Dora squeezed Eva's shoulder. "But you saved far more than you lost. Eunice told me what you did, the ambush strategy, the boulder, buying time until Ricky arrived. You kept 40 wolves from slaughtering evacuees. That matters." Eva nodded, but the words felt distant. Intellectual understanding didn't erase the weight of seeing what violence actually looked like, what it cost. "Where's Ricky?" Eva asked, realizing she hadn't seen him since they'd returned hours ago. "War room. He's been in there with Israel and the intelligence officers since we arrived." Dora's expression was grim. "We captured 3 Silver Pine warriors during the battle at Silver Pass. They're being questioned." Questioned was probably a polite word for interrogation. Eva tried not to think too hard about what that meant. "Eva Thompson." The voice was formal, commanding. Eva turned to see one of Ricky's guards, a stern-faced woman named Winnie Mackenzie. "The Alpha King requests your presence in the war room." "Immediately." Dora raised an eyebrow. That was fast. He usually takes hours with interrogations. Eva followed Winnie through the fortress corridors, her stomach twisting with anxiety. She'd expected Ricky to be furious about her breaking her promise. But he'd been surprisingly gentle on the ridge, almost understanding. That felt more dangerous than anger, like a storm waiting to break. The war room doors stood open. Inside, Ricky, Israel, Nadia, and several others stood around the terrain table, their expressions ranging from grim to outright disturbed. 3 wolves, 2 men and a woman knelt on the floor, their hands bound behind them, flanked by guards. The prisoners. From Silver Pine. Eva recognized one of them, Lowell Rutherford. He'd been one of the enforcers who dragged her to Raven's Peak, who'd held her while they threw her off the cliff. He recognized her too. His eyes widened, shock, and something like fear flashing across his face. "Eva," Ricky said, gesturing her closer. "Thank you for coming. I need you to hear this." He turned to Lowell, his voice dropping to that dangerous alpha tone that made even Eva's bones vibrate with instinctive submission. Tell her what you told us about Gary Olsen's plan." Lowell's jaw clenched. For a moment, Eva thought he might refuse. Then Ricky took a single step forward, and whatever Lowell saw in the Alpha King's eyes made him break. "The summit," Lowell said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Gary's been planning it for months. He invited every pack leader in the region, promised them trade agreements, mutual defense pacts, prosperity, but it's a trap." "What kind of trap?" Israel demanded. "He's going to kill them." Lowell's words fell like stones into water. "All of them. Every alpha who attends the summit. He's got wolves loyal to him planted in each territory, ready to seize power the moment their alphas die. In one night, he'll control half the territories in the region." The room exploded into controlled chaos, voices raised in shock and anger, strategists already spinning through implications. But Eva's mind had stuck on a single, terrible thought. "The Northern Territory," she said, cutting through the noise. Everyone turned to look at her. Gary invited Ricky to the summit. If Ricky attends, he becomes a target, Israel finished grimly, along with every other alpha in attendance. "It's a mass assassination," Nadia breathed. "He's planning to decapitate the entire region's leadership in a single strike." Ricky's expression was carved from stone. How? How does he plan to kill that many alphas at once? We're not easy to take down. Lowell's gaze dropped to the floor. "I don't know the details. Only Gary and his inner circle know. But there's a weapon. Something he acquired from outside the territories. Something that can kill even the strongest alpha." "What kind of weapon?" Ricky pressed. "I told you, I don't know." Lowell's voice rose with desperation. "I'm just an enforcer. Gary doesn't trust me with the important details. But I heard rumors something about silver. Lots of silver. Silver. The one substance that could truly harm shifters. Contact burned like acid, penetrating wounds refused to heal, and enough of it could kill even an alpha." "How much silver are we talking about?" Israel asked. "Enough to arm every one of his inner circle." Maybe more. Lowell looked up at Ricky, and Eva saw genuine fear in his eyes. Alpha King, I'm telling you this because I didn't sign up for mass murder. I joined Silverpine to protect pack interests, not to become an assassin. What Gary's planning, it's madness. It'll destabilize the entire region. Thousands will die in the chaos. And yet you still participated in his war, Ricky said coldly. You still fought against the Northern Territory. You still tried to execute Eva by throwing her off a cliff. Lowell flinched. His eyes found Eva's, and she saw shame there. I was following orders. That doesn't excuse it. I know that now. Orders, Eva repeated, her voice sharp with sudden anger. You were following orders when you dragged me to that cliff. When you held me, while they pushed me off. When you walked away and left me to die. She stepped closer, and Lowell actually recoiled. I was your packmate. I lived with you for 20 years, and you murdered me without hesitation because someone told you to. I'm sorry, Lowell whispered. Sorry doesn't bring back the life I lost. The family I thought I had. Eva turned to Ricky. But he's telling the truth about the summit. I've seen Gary work. This is exactly the kind of move he'd make grand, dramatic, leaving no room for opposition. He wants to rule through fear and violence, and this is how he'll do it. Ricky studied her for a long moment, then nodded. I believe him. The question is, what do we do about it? You don't attend, Israel said immediately. We send a representative, someone expendable. No, Ricky's voice was firm. If I don't attend, I look weak. Every pack in the region will question my authority. And Gary will just reschedule the trap for another time. No, we need to stop him now. Permanently. You want to walk into an assassination? Dora sounded incredulous. That's suicide. It's strategy, Ricky corrected. We know it's a trap now. That's an advantage. We prepare, we counter, and we end Gary Olsen's threat once and for all. How? Nadia asked. Ricky looked at Eva, and she felt the weight of his expectation like physical pressure. Eva, you've studied Gary longer than any of us. You know how he thinks. If you were planning to stop him, what would you do? Every eye in the room turned to Eva. She felt the familiar flutter of panic, the instinct to make herself small, to defer to people more qualified. But then she remembered the boulder on the ridge, remembered Ricky's words, you think differently. Eva moved to the terrain table, studying the map. The summit is being held at Silverpine territory, correct? Neutral ground near the border, Israel confirmed. An old meeting hall that's been used for centuries for interpack negotiations. Gary chose the location because he controls the surrounding area. He can position his assassins, manage the environment, control the exits. Eva's mind raced, pieces clicking together. But if we know it's a trap, we can lay a trap of our own. We attend the summit as expected, but we bring our own security wolves Gary doesn't know about. We identify his assassins before they can strike. And when Gary makes his move, we're ready. He'll expect security, Israel pointed out. He'll have planned for it. He'll expect traditional security warriors standing guard, obvious protection. But what if we send wolves he doesn't recognize, disguised as other pack members, blending into the crowd? Eva looked at Ricky. You have allies among the other packs, right? Alphas who trust you? A few, Ricky admitted. Contact them. Warn them privately about the assassination plot. Coordinate. When Gary makes his move, it won't be 20 alphas caught off guard. It'll be 20 alphas and their hidden warriors, all ready to fight back. Eva's voice gained confidence. We turn his trap into his execution. The room fell silent as everyone processed the plan. It's risky, Israel said slowly. A lot of moving parts. A lot that could go wrong. Every plan is risky when you're dealing with a madman armed with silver weapons, Ricky countered. But Eva's right, our advantage is knowledge. Gary thinks we're walking into his trap blind. Instead, we'll be ready. We end this at the summit. One way or another. He turned to his gathered officers. Israel, reach out to our allied alphas. Use secure channels. No written messages that could be intercepted. Verbal only, delivered by our most trusted runners. Nadia, I want intelligence on the meeting hall, every entrance, every exit, every place someone could hide. Dora, select our best covert operators, people who can blend in, who won't be recognized. And his eyes found Eva. Eva, you're coming with me to the summit. What? Dora's protest was immediate. Ricky, that's insane. Gary wants her dead. Bringing her to the summit is necessary, Ricky interrupted. Eva's the only one besides these prisoners who can identify Gary's inner circle on sight. She knows who his most trusted wolves are, who's likely to be an assassin. We need that intelligence in real time, and besides, his smile was cold and sharp. I want Gary to see her. I want him to know that she survived. That she's under my protection. That everything he's tried to do to her has failed. It'll throw him off balance, make him sloppy, or make him desperate. Israel warned. Good, desperate men make mistakes. Ricky's tone allowed no argument. Eva comes. That's final. Eva should have been terrified. She was walking back into Silverpine territory, into the presence of the man who'd ordered her execution, surrounded by assassins with silver weapons designed to kill alphas. But instead, she felt something else entirely. Something dark, and hungry, and long suppressed. She wanted Gary Olsen to see her, wanted him to know that he'd failed, wanted him to understand that the worthless, wolfless girl he'd thrown away had become something he couldn't ignore. She wanted him to be afraid. I'll do it, Eva said firmly. I'll come to the summit. Ricky's eyes met hers, and she saw approval there. Pride. And something deeper. A recognition that they were past the point of protection and safety. They were partners now. Equals in this dangerous game. Then it's decided, Ricky said. The summit is in 3 days. We prepare, we coordinate, and we end Gary Olsen's reign of terror permanently. He looked around the room. Dismissed. Get to work. The officers filed out, already organizing, already planning, but Ricky caught Eva's arm as she turned to leave. A word, alone. They waited until the room cleared. Then Ricky closed the door and turned to face her, his expression unreadable. You understand what you just volunteered for? He asked quietly. The danger, the risk? Yes. If things go wrong, if Gary's assassins move faster than we anticipate, you could die. I might not be able to protect you. I know. Eva stepped closer. But Ricky, I'm already dead. I died when they threw me off that cliff. Everything since then, you catching me, bringing me here, this life I've built, it's all borrowed time. So if I die at the summit stopping Gary from murdering dozens of alphas and destabilizing the entire region, that's not a tragedy. That's purpose. Ricky's jaw clenched. You're not borrowed time, Eva. You're... He stopped, struggling with words. You're essential. To this pack, to me. And I will not lose you to Gary Olsen's madness. Then we make sure his plan fails. Eva reached up, her hand cupping his cheek. Together. Ricky leaned into her touch, his eyes closing briefly. When he opened them again, they burned with an intensity that stole her breath. When this is over, he said, his voice rough. When Gary is defeated, and the summit is behind us, we're having that talk. About what this is between us. About what it means. What do you think it means? Eva asked, her heart pounding. Ricky's hand covered hers, holding it against his face. I think it means I found something I didn't know I was missing. And now that I have it, I'll burn down the world before I let it go. The words should have frightened her. The possessiveness, the intensity, the absolute certainty in his voice. But Eva had spent 20 years being nothing to everyone. Being wanted, being claimed with this kind of fierce determination felt like coming home. 3 days, Eva whispered. We survive 3 days. Then we have all the time in the world for that talk. 3 days, Ricky agreed. He pulled her against him, his arms wrapping around her with desperate strength. Then everything changes. Eva held him just as tightly, feeling his heart beat against hers, breathing in his scent of pine and smoke and safety. 3 days until the summit. 3 days until they faced Gary Olsen. 3 days until everything either ended or, finally, truly began. Chapter 9. The Gathering Storm. 3 days had never felt so short and so long simultaneously. The fortress transformed into a hive of controlled chaos. Runners came and went at all hours, carrying messages to allied alphas. Warriors trained with renewed intensity, preparing for combat they hoped wouldn't come but knew was inevitable. And Eva found herself at the center of it all. No longer the rescued wolfless girl, but an integral part of the strategy. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. Again, Israel commanded, pointing at the model of the summit hall laid out on the war room table. Walk me through Gary's likely assassin positions. Eva studied the miniature building, her mind mapping memories onto the three-dimensional space. Gary's inner circle numbers about 15 wolves. Stephanie will be positioned near the main entrance. She's his beta's daughter, so her presence won't raise suspicion, but she's deadly with bladed weapons. Brad and the remaining enforcers will be scattered throughout the hall, disguised as servers or guards. They'll strike when Gary gives the signal. And Gary himself? Nadia asked. He'll be at the head table with the other alphas, playing the gracious host. When the attack begins, he'll act surprised, maybe even stage an injury to himself to avoid suspicion. He'll let his assassins do the work, while he maintains plausible deniability. Eva's voice was steady, clinical. Talking about Gary's plan was easier when she treated it like a puzzle to solve, rather than a threat to people she cared about. Smart, Dora admitted grudgingly. If he's not actively participating, he can claim he was a victim too. Rally the surviving packs under his leadership, by positioning himself as the one who fought off the attackers. Exactly. Eva looked up at Ricky, who'd been silently observing from the corner. That's why we can't just stop the assassins. We have to expose Gary. Make it clear to everyone present that he orchestrated the entire thing. Evidence, Israel said. We need proof. We have the prisoners, Ricky pointed out. Lowell and the others, they can testify. Gary will claim they're lying. That we tortured false confessions out of them. Eva shook her head. We need something irrefutable. Something that even Gary can't explain away. The room fell silent as everyone considered the problem. How do you prove a conspiracy when the conspirator had spent months covering his tracks? The silver weapons, Eva said suddenly. Where did Gary get them? Silver that pure. In that quantity, it's not easy to acquire. There would be a trail. Records. Transactions. Nadia's eyes lit up. If we can trace the silver back to Gary, show that he purchased assassination weapons weeks before the summit he claimed was about peace and prosperity. That's our proof, Ricky finished. His smile was sharp with approval. Eva, you're brilliant. Nadia, put your best trackers on it. I want to know where every ounce of silver came from, who sold it, and how it got into Gary's hands. On it, Nadia said, already moving toward the door. The strategy sessions continued for hours, running through scenarios and contingencies until Eva's head spun with details. But slowly, a plan emerged complex, dangerous, but possible. When the others finally dispersed for the night, Eva remained in the war room, staring at the model of the summit hall. In 3 days, she'd be walking into that building, into the presence of wolves who wanted her dead. You should rest, Ricky said, appearing beside her so quietly she jumped. Tomorrow will be another long day of preparation. I'm not sure I can sleep, Eva admitted. Every time I close my eyes, I see that hall. See Gary. See everything that could go wrong. Ricky's hand found the small of her back a touch both grounding and possessive. Fear is healthy. It means you understand the stakes. But don't let it paralyze you. You've already proven you can think under pressure. The summit will be no different. What if I freeze? What if I see Stephanie or Jared? And I just... Eva's voice cracked. What if I'm not strong enough? Eva. Ricky turned her to face him, his hands framing her face. You survived being thrown off a cliff. You planned an ambush against 40 wolves with only 10 warriors. You stood on a ridge and pushed a boulder onto an alpha, then ran from him without panicking. You are strong enough. You've always been strong enough. You just needed to see it for yourself. The certainty in his voice made something in Eva's chest crack open, some final wall she'd been holding against him, against hope, against believing she could be more than what Silverpine had told her she was. I'm terrified, she whispered. Good, so am I. Ricky's thumb brushed across her cheekbone. I'm terrified of losing you, of failing to protect you, of watching you walk into danger, and being unable to stop it. But I'm also in awe of you, of your courage, your intelligence, the way you've transformed from a girl who apologized for existing into a woman who changes the course of wars. Ricky, he kissed at her. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate and claiming and full of everything they hadn't said, fear and need, and the knowledge that in 3 days, everything could end. Eva gasped against his mouth, her hands clutching his shoulders, and Ricky pulled her closer, his arms wrapping around her like he could shield her from the world through sheer will. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Ricky rested his forehead against hers. When this is over, he said, his voice rough, I'm going to court you properly. The way you deserve. With patience and romance and all the traditional rituals. And until then? Eva asked, her lips still tingling from the kiss. Until then, I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure we both survive to see that future. His eyes burned gold in the lamplight. Stay with me tonight. Not. He stopped, seeming to struggle with words. I just want you close. Want to know you're safe. Would that be acceptable? The vulnerability in his question made Eva's heart ache. The Alpha King, asking permission like a nervous suitor. Yes, Eva said simply. I'd like that. They spent the night in Ricky's chambers, a space Eva had never seen before. It was surprisingly sparse for an Alpha King's quarters. A massive bed dominated one wall, but the rest was functional maps, weapons, books on strategy and history. No luxury for luxury's sake. Just the tools of leadership. They lay together on top of the furs, fully clothed, Ricky's arms wrapped around Eva while she rested her head on his chest. They talked in quiet voices about everything and nothing, childhood memories, favorite foods, the small details that make someone real, rather than just a title or a role. Eva learned that Ricky's favorite season was autumn, because the changing leaves reminded him of transformation and renewal. That he'd taught himself to read as a child because his father believed education was weakness. That his greatest fear wasn't death but becoming the tyrant his father had turned into. And Ricky learned that Eva used to sing to herself when she was alone in the Silver Pine pack house because it made the silence less oppressive. That she'd always dreamed of traveling beyond the territories, seeing oceans and cities and places where wolves weren't the dominant species. That despite everything Silver Pine had done to her, part of her still missed the good memories, the way her mother had braided her hair, the smell of her father's leather working tools. Somewhere in the early hours of morning, they both fell asleep, tangled together, safe in the temporary peace before the storm. The next 2 days blurred together in a frenzy of preparation. Nadia's trackers found the Silver Trail, a weapons merchant in the borderlands who'd sold Gary Olson enough pure silver to arm a small army. The merchant was willing to testify in exchange for immunity, providing the hard evidence they needed. Allied Alphas sent confirmation of their cooperation, 12 pack leaders, who trusted Ricky enough to believe his warning and coordinate the countertrap. Each would bring hidden warriors to the summit. Wolves Gary wouldn't recognize. Eva trained with Dora until her muscles screamed. Learning not just combat, but how to read a room for threats, how to identify concealed weapons, how to survive if everything went wrong. She memorized the summit hall layout until she could navigate it blind. She practiced staying calm under pressure. Dora and the others staging increasingly stressful scenarios to test her composure. "You're ready?" Dora finally said on the evening before they were set to depart. "Not perfect, you'll never be a warrior. But ready enough. You'll survive this, Eva. I believe that." Coming from Dora, who rarely offered praise, the words meant everything. That final night, the pack gathered in the Great Hall for what felt like a war ceremony. Ricky stood before his assembled wolves, radiating the kind of authority that made everyone straighten with pride. "Tomorrow we travel to the summit," Ricky said, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall. "Some of you will accompany me openly. Others will travel in secret, blending with other packs, hidden until the moment you're needed. What we face tomorrow is unprecedented, a conspiracy to murder dozens of alphas and seize power through violence and treachery." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. "But we have something Gary Olson doesn't. We have unity. We have intelligence. And we have the courage to face darkness without becoming dark ourselves." His eyes found Eva in the crowd, and something passed between them, a promise, a reassurance. "We will stop this threat. We will protect the innocent. And we will show every pack in these territories that the Northern Territory stands for justice, not just power." The hall erupted in howls, a chorus of voices raised in support and determination. Eva felt the sound vibrate through her bones, felt the pack bond she'd never thought she'd experience. She was one of them now. Not despite being wolfless, but including it, part of something larger than herself. After the ceremony, as wolves dispersed to make final preparations, Ricky found Eva in the library where she'd gone to steady her nerves. "Ready?" he asked. "No," Eva admitted, "but I'll do it anyway. That's all courage ever is, doing what terrifies you, because it needs to be done." He held out his hand. "Come with me. I want to show you something." Eva took his hand, letting him lead her through the fortress and out into the night. They climbed to the highest tower, where the view stretched for miles in every direction, forests and mountains bathed in moonlight, the territory Ricky had spent years building and protecting. "When I became Alpha King," Ricky said quietly, "I swore I'd never let power corrupt me the way it corrupted my father. I'd use my strength to protect, not oppress, to build, not destroy." He turned to Eva. "But I was lonely, Eva. Respected, feared, obeyed, but alone. Until you fell from that cliff, and I caught you, and suddenly I had a reason to be strong that went beyond duty." Eva's throat tightened. "Ricky, I love you." The words were simple, devastating. "I don't know when it happened. Maybe when you stood up in the war room and offered a strategy none of my trained warriors had considered. Maybe when you pushed that boulder and saved Eunice's team. Maybe the moment I saw you falling and knew I couldn't let you die. But I love you, Eva Thompson. And I need you to know that before we walk into that summit. Because if something happens, if Gary succeeds, I need you to know that you were loved, completely, by someone who saw you for exactly who you are, and loved every part of it. Tears streamed down Eva's face. I love you too. I think I started falling the moment you shifted on that canyon floor and looked at me like I was someone worth saving, like I mattered. You do matter. Ricky cupped her face, his thumbs wiping away her tears. You matter to me. To this pack. To the future we're fighting for. And tomorrow, we're going to make sure Gary Olson never hurts anyone again. He kissed her soft and sweet and full of promises about futures they might not live to see. Eva poured everything she couldn't say into that kiss, gratitude and fear and love and hope all tangled together. When they finally pulled apart, the moon had reached its zenith, bathing them in silver light. Whatever happens tomorrow, Eva whispered. Thank you. For catching me. For believing in me. For giving me a life worth fighting for. Whatever happens tomorrow, Ricky echoed. We face it together. They departed at dawn, a small convoy led by Ricky, with Eva, Dora, Israel, and a select team of warriors traveling openly. The hidden operatives had left during the night, already blending into other packs' delegations, invisible until needed. The journey to the summit took most of the day. As they traveled south, Eva felt the landscape grow increasingly familiar. These were the borderlands near Silverpine territory. She'd walked these forests as a child, before everything changed. Now she was returning as something completely different. The summit hall came into view as the sun began to set a massive stone structure that had hosted peace negotiations for centuries. It was neutral ground, sacred territory where violence was forbidden by ancient law. Gary Olson was planning to violate that sanctity in the most brutal way possible. Other pack delegations were already arriving, alphas with their entourages, all dressed in formal attire that barely concealed weapons and tension. Eva spotted several of Ricky's allies, their faces carefully neutral but their eyes sharp with awareness. They were ready. And then, Eva saw him. Gary Olson stood at the summit hall entrance, playing the gracious host, greeting each alpha with practiced warmth. He looked older than Eva remembered, his face more lined, but his eyes held the same cold calculation. When those eyes found Ricky's convoy, Gary's expression flickered just for an instant with shock. Then he smoothed it into a welcoming smile and approached. Alpha King, Gary said, his voice carrying false warmth. I'm honored you accepted my invitation, and you've brought. His gaze landed on Eva, and she saw the moment recognition hit. His face went pale, aghast. This is Eva Thompson, Ricky said, his arms settling possessively around Eva's waist. She's under my protection. I trust that won't be a problem? Gary's smile turned brittle. Of course not. All are welcome at the summit. But his eyes promised murder. Eva lifted her chin and met his gaze steadily. She'd spent 20 years being afraid of men like Gary Olson. She was done being afraid. Shall we? Ricky said pleasantly, gesturing toward the hall entrance. Gary recovered his composure with visible effort. Yes. The proceedings begin shortly. I'm sure it will be memorable. They entered the hall, and Eva felt the trap close around them like jaws snapping shut. The real battle was about to begin. Chapter 10. The Reckoning. The summit hall was magnificent in a cold, imposing way. Vaulted ceilings supported by stone columns carved with ancient wolf symbols, long tables arranged in a U-shape, with Gary's position at the head. Torches burned in iron sconces along the walls, casting flickering shadows that made every corner feel dangerous. Eva counted the attendees as they entered. 23 alphas, including Ricky and Gary, each with a small entourage, nearly 100 wolves total, all packed into this hall. All potential targets. And somewhere among them, Gary's assassins waited. Eva spotted Stephanie immediately dressed in elegant formal wear, playing the role of dutiful daughter to Silverpine's beta. She stood near the main entrance as Eva had predicted, her posture relaxed but her eyes constantly scanning the room. When those eyes landed on Eva, Stephanie's shock was visible before she masked it with a cold smile. Good. Let them be rattled. Let them wonder how Eva survived. Ricky guided Eva to their assigned seats, positions of honor near Gary's head table, a deliberate power play. Dora and Israel flanked them, while their other warriors dispersed throughout the hall, mingling with other delegations. I count at least 8 of Gary's known associates, Eva murmured to Ricky, her voice too quiet for others to hear. All positioned strategically, near exits, by the weapons storage, close to key alphas. Our people are in position too, Ricky replied equally quietly. Allied alphas have been notified. When Gary makes his move, we'll be ready. Gary rose from his seat, raising his hands for attention. The hall gradually quieted. Welcome, honored alphas, to this historic summit, Gary began, his voice carrying the practiced warmth of a seasoned politician. For too long, our territories have been fractured, suspicious of one another, competing instead of cooperating. I've called you here today to propose a new era, an alliance of packs working together for mutual prosperity and protection. It was a beautiful speech, compelling. If Eva hadn't known about the assassination plot, she might have believed his sincerity. However, Gary continued, his expression darkening. Before we can move forward, we must address a serious matter that threatens us all. There are those among us who seek to dominate rather than cooperate, who use fear and violence to maintain power, who, his eyes landed on Ricky with calculated accusation, murder their own fathers to steal their thrones. The hall erupted in shocked murmurs. Eva felt Ricky tense beside her, his control slipping for just an instant before reasserting itself. Are you accusing me of something, Gary? Ricky's voice was deadly calm. I'm stating facts, Gary replied smoothly. 12 years ago, you challenged your father to trial by combat, you killed him. And now you rule the Northern Territory through the same brutality you condemned him for. My father had become a tyrant, Ricky said, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall. He executed innocent wolves based on paranoia, terrorized his own pack. I challenged him to save those he would have destroyed. What's your excuse for what you're about to do? Gary's smile faltered. I don't know what you mean, don't you? Ricky stood, his presence commanding immediate attention. You've gathered 23 alphas in one place, promised them peace and prosperity, but you've also positioned assassins throughout this hall, wolves loyal to you, armed with silver weapons designed to kill alpha wolves. You're planning a massacre, and then you'll claim you survived an attack by unknown enemies, positioning yourself as the hero while you consolidate power over the territories whose leaders you murdered. The silence that followed was absolute. Every eye turned to Gary, who'd gone pale but recovered quickly. That's absurd, Gary said with forced laughter. Pure fantasy. Alpha King, I understand you're paranoid given your history, but to accuse me of plotting mass murder with no evidence, we have evidence. Nadia appeared from the crowd, carrying a leather satchel. She dumped its contents onto the main table, silver daggers, dozens of them, each engraved with the Silver Pine pack mark. These were discovered in a storage room adjacent to this hall. Enough silver weapons to arm your entire inner circle. Care to explain why you stockpiled assassination tools at a peace summit? Gary's expression cracked. Those aren't mine. Someone must have planted. We have your weapons, merchant. Israel interrupted, stepping forward. Todd Moore. He's prepared to testify that you purchased these weapons 3 weeks ago. Specified they needed to be pure silver, lethal to alpha wolves. Paid in gold from Silverpine's pack treasury. We also have testimony from your own warriors, Ricky added, gesturing to where Lowell and the other captured Silverpine wolves were being led into the hall by guards. Warriors who participated in your war against the Northern Territory, and are willing to confess your entire plan in exchange for clemency. Gary's facade shattered completely. His face twisted with rage, and his hand shot up in a sharp gesture. It was the signal. Everything exploded into chaos. Stephanie drew blades from hidden sheaths, lunging toward the nearest alpha. Brad and the other enforcers pulled silver weapons and attacked their assigned targets. Gary's assassins moved in coordinated precision, the result of weeks of planning. But they weren't the only ones who'd planned. Ricky's hidden warriors revealed themselves wolves who'd been disguised as servants, as other pack members, as harmless delegates. They intercepted Gary's assassins before most could reach their targets. Steel clashed against silver. Snarls filled the air. Ricky shifted in an instant, his massive black and silver wolf launching across the table toward Gary. But the Silverpine Alpha was already moving, shifting into his own wolf form, a brown beast, large but nowhere near Ricky's size. Eva pressed herself against the wall, trying to stay out of the way of the combat while keeping track of threats. Dora fought 3 assassins at once, her movements efficient and deadly. Israel had shifted, his wolf form protecting a cluster of younger alphas who'd been caught off guard. And then Eva saw her. Stephanie, having failed to reach her initial target, had spotted Eva. Her expression twisted into something ugly and hateful as she changed direction, abandoning her assassination assignment in favor of personal revenge. You should have stayed dead, Stephanie snarled, advancing with 2 silver daggers gleaming in her hands. Gary's going to reward me personally for finishing what we started at the cliff. Eva's training kicked in. She didn't have weapons, didn't have a wolf, but she had something else she'd learned: to read combat, to anticipate, to use environment and momentum. Stephanie lunged. Eva dodged, grabbed a wooden chair, and swung it with all her strength. The chair shattered against Stephanie's side, throwing off her balance. Eva followed up with a kick to the knee, a pressure point Dora had drilled into her, and Stephanie stumbled. "You're nothing," Stephanie hissed, recovering faster than Eva had hoped. "A wolfless waste who got lucky. I'm someone who survived everything you threw at me," Eva shot back. "While you're about to die for a man who used you as a disposable pawn." Stephanie screamed and attacked wildly, her technique degrading into pure rage. Eva ducked and weaved, using columns and overturned furniture as shields, drawing Stephanie deeper into the hall and away from the main combat. She just needed to survive long enough for help to arrive. Just needed to. Stephanie's blade caught Eva's arm, slicing deep. The silver burned like acid, and Eva screamed, her vision blurred with pain. Stephanie smiled, raising the dagger for a killing blow. Then Dora's blade punched through Stephanie's chest from behind. "Told you I'd make her regret it," Dora said coldly as Stephanie collapsed. She turned to Eva, her expression softening marginally. "You all right?" "I'll live," Eva gasped, clutching her wounded arm. The silver burn was excruciating, but not fatal. "Good. Stay here. Rebecca's somewhere safe. She'll patch you up after this is over." Dora turned back toward the main battle. "This isn't done yet." Eva looked toward where Ricky and Gary were still locked in savage combat. They'd destroyed half the hall and their fight tables splintered, columns cracked, stone floor torn up from claws. Ricky was larger, stronger, faster, but Gary fought with the desperation of someone who had everything to lose. Gary's jaws found Ricky's shoulder, silver-coated fangs. He'd thought of everything sinking deep. Ricky roared in pain, the silver preventing the wound from healing immediately. No, this couldn't happen. Eva couldn't lose him. Not after everything. Not when they'd finally found each other. Eva ran toward the fight, ignoring Dora's shout of warning. She had no weapon, no strength to make a difference. But she had knowledge. Gary. Eva's voice cut through the chaos. Both wolves' heads snapped toward her. "Your mate, Jacqueline. She knows everything. She's already testified to the Pack Council. Even if you kill everyone here, she'll expose you. You've already lost." It was a complete lie. Gary wasn't mated. But Eva was betting on one thing: Gary's paranoia. His need for control. His inability to trust anyone completely. Gary's moment of distraction was all Ricky needed. The Alpha King's jaws clamped around Gary's throat with devastating finality. One savage shake, and it was over. Gary Olsen's wolf form went limp. The Silverpine Alpha architect of assassination plots, murderer of innocents, tyrant who'd thrown a wolfless girl off a cliff, was dead. The remaining assassins, seeing their leader fall, either surrendered or tried to flee. Allied Alpha's warriors made short work of those who ran. Within minutes, the battle was over. The hall was a wreck. Bodies littered the floor: assassins who'd attacked fellow wolves, and 3 Alphas who hadn't survived despite the protection. The cost of Gary's ambition was written in blood and death. But dozens more had been saved. The conspiracy had been exposed. The territories were safe. Ricky shifted back to human form, his body covered in wounds, including the vicious silver-poisoned bite on his shoulder. His eyes found Eva immediately, scanning her for injuries. When he saw the silver burn on her arm, his expression darkened with fury and fear. "Eva, I'm fine," she said, though her voice shook. "You're the one with silver poisoning. You need Rebecca. Now." "Stubborn woman," Ricky muttered, but allowed Israel to support him as they made their way to where Rebecca had set up a makeshift healing station. The aftermath took hours. Wounds were tended. The dead were identified and mourned. The surviving assassins were bound and questioned. Allied Alphas gave statements, confirming Gary's plot and Ricky's heroism in exposing it. By dawn, a new reality had settled over the territories. Gary Olsen was dead. His conspirators were in custody. The Silverpine Pack leaderless, its reputation destroyed, would need to be absorbed by neighboring packs or rebuilt from scratch under new leadership. And Eva Thompson stood in the center of it all, no longer invisible, no longer worthless. 2 weeks later, Eva stood on the fortress battlements watching the sunrise paint the Northern Territory gold. Her arm had healed, though Rebecca warned the silver scar would remain. A permanent mark of the night. She'd helped stop a massacre. "You're up early," Ricky said, appearing beside her. His shoulder had healed as well, though more slowly due to the silver. He moved carefully, still regaining full strength. "Couldn't sleep," Eva admitted. "Too much has happened. My brain won't stop processing it all." I know the feeling. Ricky's arm slid around her waist, pulling her close. The regional council met yesterday. They formally recognized what happened at the summit. Gary's conspiracy, your role in stopping it. You're being credited as a hero, Eva, the wolfless girl who saved the territories. Eva laughed bitterly. I'm not a hero. I was just trying to survive. That's what makes you a hero. You didn't have power or position or a wolf. You just had intelligence and courage and the refusal to let evil win. Ricky turned her to face him. The council also made me an offer. They want to expand my authority, give me formal oversight over multiple territories, make me not just Alpha King of the North, but High King of the region. Eva's eyes widened. That's incredible. You'd be the most powerful wolf in living memory. I declined. You what? Ricky smiled. I told them I'm not interested in ruling an empire. The Northern Territory is enough for me. But I did make a counteroffer. I told them I'd serve as an advisor to the regional council. Help them rebuild after Gary's attempted coup. Train new alphas in leadership that doesn't require brutality. Work toward a future where packs cooperate instead of constantly competing for dominance. They agreed? Unanimously. Apparently nearly dying together creates strong bonds of trust. His expression grew serious. But I made one condition, that my mate be recognized as an equal partner in this work, that she have a voice in regional politics, regardless of her wolf status. Eva's heart stuttered. Your mate? Ricky dropped to one knee, pulling a ring from his pocket. It was simple, a silver band woven with gold, catching the sunrise light. Eva Thompson. You fell from a cliff and I caught you, but you caught me right back. You've challenged me, inspired me, loved me despite every reason not to. You're the strongest person I know, and I want to spend the rest of my life proving to you that you were always worth saving. Will you be my mate? My partner? My queen? Tears streamed down Eva's face. Yes, 1,000 times yes. Ricky slid the ring onto her finger and stood, pulling her into a kiss that tasted like joy and promises and futures they'd fought desperately to reach. When they finally broke apart, both were grinning like idiots. So, Ricky said, his forehead pressed against hers. About that proper courtship I mentioned. Skip it, Eva interrupted. We've already been through more together than most mates experience in a lifetime. I don't need flowers and candlelit dinners. I just need you. Good. Because I'm terrible at romance anyway. Ricky's smile was radiant. When do you want the mating ceremony? Is tomorrow too soon? Tomorrow is perfect. The mating ceremony happened at sunset, in the Great Hall transformed with flowers and light. The entire Northern Territory pack attended, along with visiting delegations from allied packs. Dora served as Ricky's second. Rebecca stood with Eva, helping her dress in traditional mating robes that felt both foreign and perfectly right. You look beautiful, Rebecca said, adjusting Eva's hair. I'm so happy for you. You deserve this happiness. Thank you, Eva whispered, for everything, for being kind when I arrived, for healing me, for believing I was worth saving. You were always worth saving, Eva. Some people just needed time to see it. The ceremony itself was ancient, beautiful. Ricky and Eva stood before the pack, hands joined, speaking vows that bound them not just emotionally but spiritually, a mate bond that transcended the physical, creating a connection that would last lifetimes. When the ceremony concluded and Ricky kissed his new mate, the pack's howls of celebration could be heard for miles. That night, in Ricky's chambers, now their chambers, Eva stood by the window looking out at the territory that had become her home. Having second thoughts? Ricky asked, coming up behind her and wrapping his arms around her waist. No. Just thinking about how much has changed. 6 weeks ago, I was the wolfless outcast waiting to be exiled. Now I'm mated to the Alpha King, and being called a hero of the territories. It's surreal. You were always extraordinary, Eva. The circumstances just needed to catch up to your potential. Ricky nuzzled her neck. And for the record, I don't care that you don't have a wolf. I don't need you to shift or hunt or do anything except be exactly who you are. That's more than enough. Eva turned in his arms, her hands framing his face. I love you. I don't think I'll ever get tired of saying that. Good. Because I'll never get tired of hearing it. Ricky kissed her softly. What do you want to do tomorrow? Now that we're officially mated and you're queen of the Northern Territory, I want to establish a sanctuary, Eva said. For wolves like me, the rejects, the wolfless, the ones who don't fit the traditional mold. I want to create a place where being different doesn't mean being disposable. Ricky's eyes shone with pride. That's perfect. We'll build it together. A place where every wolf or non-wolf has value. A place where no one ever has to feel worthless, Eva agreed. They stood together at the window, looking out at the future they would build not just for themselves, but for every outcast who needed someone to catch them when they fell. Eva Thompson had been thrown off a cliff and left for dead. But she'd been caught by a king who saw her worth when no one else did. And together, they'd build a kingdom where worth was measured not by power or status or the ability to shift, but by courage, compassion, and the refusal to let darkness win. Where the girl who'd been nothing became the queen who changed everything. Where the fall that should have killed her became the beginning of the greatest transformation imaginable. And where love, fierce, defiant, unconditional love proved that sometimes being broken is just the first step toward becoming unbreakable. Epilogue. 1 year later, Eva stood in the center of the new sanctuary, a sprawling complex of buildings designed to house wolves who didn't fit traditional pack structures. Wolfless individuals like herself. Omegas fleeing abusive packs. Lone wolves seeking community without hierarchy. Hybrids. Anyone who needed a place to belong. It's beautiful, Dora said, appearing beside her. The beta had become one of Eva's closest friends over the past year, their relationship evolving from mentor-student to genuine equals. You should be proud. We should all be proud, Eva corrected. This was a team effort. The sanctuary had taken a year to build, funded by the Northern Territory and supported by allied packs across the region. It was more than just shelter, it was a statement. A declaration that worth wasn't defined by wolf status or pack hierarchy, but by the content of your character. Eva. A young girl ran up, her face bright with excitement. Eva, I got accepted. The healer said I can start training with Rebecca next week. Eva smiled, recognizing Ernestine, a wolfless 13-year-old who'd arrived at the sanctuary 6 months ago. Traumatized and convinced she was worthless. Under Eva's mentorship, the girl had discovered a talent for healing and a hunger to learn. That's wonderful, Ernestine. I'm so proud of you. I never thought I could be anything, Ernestine said, her eyes shining. But you showed me different. Thank you. As the girl ran off to share the news with friends, Eva felt Ricky's presence before she heard him. You're good at this, he said, sliding his arms around her from behind. Inspiring hope. Building futures. I'm just paying forward what you did for me. Eva leaned back against his chest. Catching someone when they fall. Showing them they're worth more than anyone told them. Speaking of which, Ricky's hand moved to rest on Eva's still flat stomach. How are you feeling? Eva covered his hand with hers, marveling at the miracle growing inside her. A child. Against all odds, despite being wolfless, she was carrying the Alpha King's baby. Terrified and thrilled in equal measure, Eva admitted. What if our child is wolfless like me? What if they face the same rejection I did? Then they'll have parents who understand exactly what that feels like, who will love them unconditionally and build them a world where being different is celebrated, not condemned. Ricky turned her to face him. Our child, wolf or not, will be loved, Eva. I promise you that. Eva kissed him softly. I believe you. A howl echoed across the valley, the pack's evening call, summoning everyone to gather. Ricky and Eva walked together toward the sound, hands intertwined, hearts aligned. Eva Thompson had been the wolfless girl thrown off a cliff. Now she was Queen Eva, beloved maid of the Alpha King, founder of the sanctuary for outcasts, and living proof that your beginning doesn't define your ending. She'd fallen into darkness and been caught by light. And in being saved, she'd learned to save herself and countless others who needed someone to believe they were worth catching. The girl who'd been nothing had become everything that mattered. And that, Eva thought as Ricky pulled her close and the pack's howls filled the air, was the greatest transformation of all.